CD7.
They gathered up their things and travelled down to Deck 8 in silence, except from the thudding of her heart, which was so loud that teenagers were probably dancing to it up on Deck 14. Inside the cabin, the cool of the air conditioning made absolutely no difference whatsoever, especially when Nate dropped his things on a chair and then turned and gently put one hand on either side of her neck and kissed her. They'd kissed before, outside on deck, smoochy snogs while they were dancing, but this was different. It was urgent, passionate. She wound her hands through his hair and returned the kiss, tasting a mixture of beer and salt on his breath. She could feel his pelvis pressed against hers, his hardness against her stomach. Don't panic. She was about to do filthy things with a man in Speedos. Yes, she was. She could do this. Don't panic. Focus on the positives. It was intoxicating, delicious, horny, and... She pulled back. Terrifying. She panicked. Nate, can we slow down a bit? It's just that... Oh, bugger. I don't know how to say this. He looked at her searchingly. It's just that... Right, here it is. I haven't had sex for years. It might even be a decade. And I'm finding this mildly terrifying. In her head, she saw an image of Patsy, fag-in-mouth, slapping a hand to her forehead in despair. Nate checked his watch. Well, sure, honey, but the others are going to be back real soon, and I promised I'd go play soccer with the boys at 6 o'clock. Her laughter surprised her as much as it surprised him. She'd been a sexual vacuum for years, and now a man in Speedos was telling her to get a shake on because he was due to play football at 6. Her country and western cowboy couldn't have burst her romantic bubble more if he'd moonwalked across the cabin while farting out the tune to Islands in the Stream. What the hell was wrong with her? Why couldn't she just pucker up and get with it? She was an almost 50-year-old woman who could do whatever she damn well pleased, and yet she was stuck somewhere in a bloody big pile of sexual repression. It was never like this with Drew. They'd met so young and were together so long that it was always great. Always right, up until he met that tart Mona. A feeling of utter despondence crept up from her flip-flops to her moist upper lip. Regardless of the reasons, this, her, Nate, the fledgling fling, felt all wrong. Time to back out as gracefully as her sarong would allow. I'm sorry, Nate. I think maybe holiday romances are just not for me. I'm so sorry. With that, she leant over, gave him an apologetic kiss on the lips, and then bolted out of the door, leaving a pair of rapidly deflating Speedos in her wake. Tess. The cool breeze from the open doors to the balcony made the flames on the candles flutter. Up on the mezzanine, Tess swapped her shorts for a pair of skinny jeans and pulled a black jersey waterfall cardigan on over her white t-shirt. With her hair pulled up into a ponytail, she could have passed for a college student. Right now, she wished she still was. Being an adult was seriously overrated. Downstairs, Drew answered the knock at the door and then wheeled in a fully laden table from room service. The original intention had been for them all to have dinner together tonight, but the plans had been vetoed by just about everyone. Sarah called off with a headache, John and Penny wanted to have an early night with the kids, Eliza, gutted that she'd somehow missed Kai and his family in Pisa, was making up for it by meeting him at 7 p.m. Max had booked a circuit class in the gym. Piers claimed he had some urgent business to attend to, and Mona... Actually, Mona was the only one who was disappointed that the dinner plans had crashed, but she'd been left with no option other than to make her own plans after everyone else did the same. Tess was grateful for small mercies. The thought of dinner with Mona held absolutely no appeal. Drew pushed the table over to the window, then put the brake on and pulled over 2 chairs and placed them facing each other. He checked she was still upstairs. "Dinner's here, honey." "I'm just coming down." He removed the cloches from the plates, unwrapped the linen cover on the bread basket, and poured them both glasses of sparkling white wine. That had been a concession to Tess. He preferred red. As Tess came down the stairs, it struck her how perfectly civil they were being to each other. Polite, like good friends, close neighbours, old pals. She pulled her cardigan around her and sat down, pulling one foot up on the chair, one hand wrapped around the knee that was now at her shoulder. He smiled at her kindly, and she responded in kind. She wanted to scream. Instead, she blurted, "I want to have children." He sighed, the weariest sigh she had ever heard. "Tess, we agreed." "No, I agreed. Me. You told me that having children was non-negotiable, and I loved you so much that I agreed. I agreed never to have children so that I could have you. That was the deal." He nodded. "And that's changed?" "That's changed," she agreed. "I've known for ages, really, but didn't want to admit it to myself. But this afternoon with the twins, it just confirmed it." Across the table, Drew took a bite of his steak, but Tess ignored her chicken supreme. She had no appetite for anything that wasn't 100% carbohydrate and in the food group labelled comfort eating. She waited until he'd finished chewing and was looking at her with piercing, sad eyes. "Since the day we met, I've gone along with everything you wanted. This isn't a partnership. It's your marriage, and I'm just in it." There was no bitterness or accusation in her tone, just matter-of-fact calmness. He didn't respond, probably, she thought, stunned into silence by her uncharacteristic assertiveness. "I love you, but we're not making each other happy anymore, and unless something changes, I think we're going to end up resenting each other, Drew. In fact, I think I'm starting to resent you already." He put his glass down and stared at her for a moment. "I don't think I've ever made you do anything you don't want to do." She shook her head sadly. "The fact that you say that proves how disconnected we are." "Why?" His voice was getting agitated now. "What have you ever done that you didn't want to?" Refusing to let this escalate to a fight, she kept her voice calm. "I've spent more nights alone than I could count. I've finished dinner by myself so often that I can't remember ever seeing you over dessert and coffee. I made myself believe that I could live happily without ever having children. And I'm here with you now, on a holiday I didn't want to take. I wanted to have a quiet romantic trip, just you and me, but that wasn't enough." She bit her lip to stop her eyes filling up. "I was never enough." He seemed pained by that. "You were." "No, I wasn't, Drew, and now I don't think you're enough for me. I want to have a family. You already have yours, but I want that too." "Say yes." The optimist inside her drummed up a whole scenario that took them straight to a happy ending. He would say yes, she would have a baby, maybe twins, since they obviously ran in the family. He would cut back on work, perhaps even take an early retirement and write the book he'd been talking about for years, or even semi-retirement, taking a more consultative role at the paper. Just say yes. "Tess, I don't know what you want from me. I'm 50 years old. I'm too old to go back to changing nappies and parents' nights." "Other guys do it. Ronnie Wood has just had twins and he's 106. Drew smiled, then reached over and took her hand, winding his fingers around hers like it was the first time they'd ever touched. "I don't know if I can do that, Tess." Their eyes locked again, 100 different emotions and thoughts passing between them, layered with sadness and uncertainty. "It's really simple, Drew. Think about it. I don't expect an answer right now. But if you love me enough, then you will." Mona. Bored. Mona was so bored she was close to calling her assistant Rupert for gossip. How sad was that? Or perhaps she'd give that gorgeous model Adrian a call. God knows he'd left about 20 messages on her answering machine this week. Ah, the young. They were always so keen. And yet here she was, sitting in the Ocean View bar on her own, with not even a random stranger to flirt with for her own amusement. Blaine would probably be an adequate distraction, but she had no idea where he was. They'd had dinner in the suite tonight, and then Mona had left Piers and Max watching some Italian football game on the television. It was an aversion tactic, really. She had to leave before Max headed to his circuit class. Otherwise, Piers might want to have sex and lavish her with love and affection. What was it he'd said to Emily? Oh, that was it. I've finally realised what I want, and I just hope it's not too late to get it. Well, it was too late, but she wasn't going to tell him that until they were back on dry land, and she'd made the preparations she needed to make to leave. A new home for her and Drew, and a lawyer to make sure that both breakups were as painless as possible. Two very tall, athletic guys came through the door and passed by where she was sitting with an appreciative glance. As they went on to the bar, she realised from their conversation that they were French. Très bon. She hadn't been with a French guy since Paris Fashion Week last year. Jean-Baptiste had been both highly skilled and highly addicted to coke, a combination that made for long, energetic nights and keeping as big a distance as possible during the days. Okay, enough of sitting here looking like an advert for, admittedly beautiful, desperation. She slipped her iPhone out of her silk Fendi clutch, then jumped as it rang in her hand. Caller ID informed her that it was the office. Rupert's claims of having psychic gifts he inherited from his granny might not be too off the mark after all. Darling, you read my mind. What are you still doing at the office so late? There was a momentary silence at the other end. Mona? It's Guy. Oh, sorry, Guy. I thought it was Rupert. What can I do for you? Are you looking for Drew? I can get him to call you back in just a few minutes. Yes, a chance to go interrupt whatever cosy little tete-a-tete Drew and Tess were having, and remind him once again how indispensable his favourite ex-wife was to him. Actually, Mona, it's you I'm looking for. We've got a bit of a situation here. Oh, God, what now? If Kate Moss has decided to sue because I said she looked like a haggard old bint last week, I swear I'll— No, it's not Kate. Oh. You know a guy called Adrian Meadows? It was more of a statement than a question. Yes, he's one of my regular models. If her brow wasn't Botoxed into an immovable state, it would have furrowed in confusion. Is he checking on last month's payments? I'm sure I passed them. If not, Rupert could sort it out in the morning. Bloody hell, what a farce. Calling her on holiday because some idiot in accounts had fucked up the payments again. They were probably too busy slashing her budgets to actually do the jobs they were supposed to be doing. Mona, it's nothing to do with payments. This time, she registered the tone of Guy's voice. It sounded like the tone you would use to notify someone of a death. So, what is it? Adrian Meadows has gone to the Sunday News. Offered them a story and pictures. Said you were shagging him in return for jobs. He's accusing you of sexual harassment, blackmail, bribery. Fuck, Mona. He's accusing you of everything short of being responsible for the breakdown of world peace. It's not good, I'm afraid. In an instant, her blood ran cold, and she had to fight the urge to throw up on the table in front of her. That conniving, evil, blood-sucking, fame-hungry little bastard. A million thoughts collided in her head before sorting themselves into a logical order. This would ruin her. There were enough people who would relish the opportunity to gloat about it, and she would become a laughingstock. Her career, everything she had worked for, would be over. No one would employ her again with this kind of stigma attached to her name. A lifetime of work, reputation, and sheer talent destroyed because of that little fucker. The humiliation. She could almost feel it searing her skin. True, it would be over. There was no way in hell that they would have a future if this became public. Drew was Mr. Clean, allergic to scandal. He deplored idiots who got themselves into messes like this. It didn't matter that the story was grossly exaggerated. She'd put herself in a position to incur national ignominy, and Drew would avoid at all costs being associated with a public figure of ridicule. But Drew was also the only one who could stop this. He was powerful enough to kill this story dead, but she had never, ever known him to use that kind of influence. His philosophy had always been that as someone who exposed the lives of others, he'd be hypocritical to shelter a public figure from the consequences of their actions. Over the years, he'd had the opportunity to act to protect several acquaintances and at least 2 close friends, but he'd refused. Publish and be damned for your actions. No, Drew wouldn't save a friend. But she would bet anything that he would act to preserve the reputation of his future wife. Guy, who knows about this? Just Jay Lemming at the Sunday News. Adrian went directly to him. He called me out of professional courtesy, and I've called you. That's it. Don't suppose you've got anything on Jay that will make this all go away? She racked her brain. Nothing, unfortunately. Guy, have you told Drew yet? No. Then don't. Mona, Guy, do not push me. You would be a foolish man to do so. They may have joked in the past about her knowing his secrets, but they both knew that Mona was well aware of many little escapades that his wife would probably rather not be aware of. Speak to Jay, and I don't care how you do it, but do not let them run the story in this week's paper. Tell him you'll get more details and he can run it next week. Pull in a favour. Hell, I don't care if you screw him over his desk, just to buy me time. I'll see what I can do. Mona knew that he'd come through, for his own sake. And Guy, Drew had better not hear about this from anyone else but me. Chapter 17. Genoa. Sarah. Sarah clutched her morning coffee and watched as the ship slowly pulled into the dock at Genoa. Since she'd risen at 6 a.m. after a sleepless night, she'd gone for a walk before eventually settling with a coffee on a thick padded reading chair at the front of Deck 14 to watch the sunrise and then the 7 a.m. arrival in Genoa. Glancing around now, her early morning companions were a few elderly gentlemen and a couple of young boys with binoculars who shouted, "Wow, look at that!" every few seconds. For the last half an hour, she'd been deliberating whether to leave the ship today. The whole family was definitely going ashore in Monaco tomorrow for Drew's birthday dinner, and the following day they would be back in Barcelona. The thought of one last lazy solo day appealed to her. The only problem was that her options for lazy locations were limited. Staying in the cabin held no appeal. It felt slightly claustrophobic after a few daylight hours. Lying up in the adults-only area would be bliss, if it wasn't for the fact that there was every chance she would bump into Nate. On the other hand, she could find a sun lounger on one of the 4 relaxation decks, but she'd be on edge all day in case Piers walked by and spotted her. Maybe going off the ship was a safer bet, less chance of male-induced anxiety. This was exactly the reason that it was better to stay in her kitchen making inappropriate sponge cakes for a living. No drama, and the only disaster was an incorrectly placed nipple. "Can I join you?" So much for avoiding Piers. God, he looked rough. Really, really rough. He was dressed casually in jeans and a pale blue polo shirt, but tiredness was etched into every line on his face. She couldn't help but feel a pang of sympathy for him. "Are we going to have another argument that'll end up with me storming off? Only I've got coffee here that I don't want to spill," she asked, unwilling to drag the animosity on any longer. She'd been thinking about him a lot in her restless hours. He was such a lovely man, and there was no escaping the reality that most of her happiest, hilarious moments on this holiday had been spent with him. In fact, right up until the day in Sorrento, she really thought that she'd met a wonderful new friend. Maybe they could still salvage some of that. He sat down beside her and said nothing for a few tense moments. Eventually, he turned to look at her. "I just wanted to apologize to you. I'm really sorry I offended you, and trust me, that was the last thing I wanted to do." "It's okay. As I said, I think I probably overreacted a bit too. This week has reinforced just exactly how crap I am at everything connected with male-female relationships. Honestly, if I was a horse, they'd shoot me." Piers laughed so loudly and with such relief that an old man nearby frowned and adjusted his hearing aid. "Well, we'd have to go down together then, because I'm just as bad." There was a prolonged pause as both of them adjusted to their relationship coming out of the deep freeze. Sarah was surprised at just how much this pleased her. "You know, I didn't want to come on this holiday. It was Mona who made it impossible to say no. But being here has made things so much clearer. I want you to know that I'm not the kind of guy who goes around chatting up every bird I meet and getting up to no good behind my wife's back. Actually, that's not true. You don't have to explain anything to me, Piers, Sarah told him. But I want to. Not to try and win you over, but because I just want you to know that I wasn't pulling some cheap shot with what I said to you back there. Things between Mona and I haven't been right for a long time. She sees other guys. I was seeing someone else too. Shit, how bloody embarrassing is that? In truth, we should have called a halt to it a long time ago. I just wanted you to know that. I'm sorry for coming on to you. I've loved every minute of getting to know you, Sarah, and whatever bloke is smart enough to land you will be a lucky man. I'm going to sort things out at my end and start living a more uncomplicated life. Bloody ridiculous to be in this mess at my age. I won't bother you again, love. Piers, you're not bothering me. Now that she understood what was happening, it was almost a relief. He and Mona were having a rough patch, and he'd been confused and hit on her because he was miserable. It made sense now. Sort of. She was glad he wasn't just an old lech looking for a quick shag. Let's just forget Sorrento ever happened and move on. I'm sorry you've got problems with Mona. I'm sure you'll work it out. Her attention was caught by a figure in gym clothes running towards them from the right, and she shook her head. Over 3,000 folks on this ship, and I keep bumping into the same people. Drew stopped in front of them, his running vest dark with sweat. Right, I'm off, Piers announced, standing up and patting his slightly rotund abdominal area. Nothing personal, mate, but life can be shite enough without standing next to you in that lycra get-up. Off he went, leaving Drew and Sarah laughing behind him. So what are you doing up here this time in the morning? Drew asked her as he took the seat Piers had just vacated. Meeting everyone I know, apparently, Sarah replied. He gave her that look, the one that she knew so well, the one that said, Okay, so now tell me what you're really thinking. He'd always been able to read her like that. She was sure it was why he'd got bored with her. Too predictable, too easy, too bland. Unlike the enigmatic and exciting Mona. Cal. I'm just thinking, she admitted. I've loved this week, Drew. But without coming over all Oprah on you, it's really made me reevaluate what I'm doing and what I want out of life. I know that feeling, he concurred sadly. Do you sometimes wish you'd done things differently? Sometimes, she said. But there's no point in that, is there? It's not as if you can ever go back and change things. I wish I could. He was staring so wistfully off into the middle distance that Sarah wondered if he was actually talking to her or to himself. She also realised that she was waiting for him to leave, to jump up and say he had another appointment, to suddenly remember he had to make a call, to just be typically Drew, with no time for her or anyone else. If only his priorities had been different, they might have made it. But they weren't, and she realised now that she'd let him dent her self-confidence so much that for all these years she'd convinced herself she didn't want another relationship. No more. Time to start living again. What was it that you wanted to talk to me about? She asked him, snapping him out of the weird stare thing he had going on. What? The other day, you said you wanted to talk to me. I did. Another silence. This was like pulling teeth. Well? Good morning. Sarah didn't even have to turn to check the originator of the voice. For the love of Jesus, what was going on up here? Was there a team of guys at all the lifts directing every member of their party along to this meeting point? Typical Mona, Sarah decided as the other woman came around the seats and into full view. Gucci sunglasses at 7 a.m, before the sun had even had a chance to get its act together. Below the neck was typically glam too, black spandex running tights and a boob tube that, should it ever find its way into Sarah's wardrobe, was so small it could be worn as an armband in time of bereavement. Tess said I would find you up here, she told Drew. Is something wrong? He replied. Nope, just thought I'd join you for a run. Sorry, am I interrupting anything important? Sarah and Drew looked at each other before both shaking their heads. No, not at all, just gabbing, Sarah said. Mona nodded, as if that was exactly the explanation she'd been expecting. Sarah racked her memory to see if she'd mentally called Mona any derogatory names so far this morning, but she couldn't be sure. Mangled old boot. There, that felt better. Okay then, I'm ready to go if you are, she told Drew. He got up, but there was no hiding the fact that he looked weary. As they jogged off, dodging elderly bystanders, Sarah felt a distinct sense of unease. It was absolutely none of her business, but perhaps it was time to have a word with Tess and give her a gentle hint. Whenever Mona was around her husband, Tess should really borrow a set of binoculars off those kids to keep an eye on her at all times. Mona. The setting wasn't ideal. The timing wasn't great. But Mona had been pushed into a situation, and the only thing she could do was go with the flow and aim for a win. 48 hours. She had 48 hours to lock down a future with Drew and enlist his help with the Adrian situation. The very thought of that duplicitous prick made the hairs on the back of her neck stand up. When this situation was closed down, she'd make sure he was modelling jockstraps in Siberia for the rest of his life. They ran for another half an hour, side by side, keeping pace before calling it a day and heading to the coffee bar for a couple of takeaway skinny lattes. Steaming cups in hand, they sat down at a wicker table near the back end of the ship. Oh, okay, the aft. But Mona still thought that was a bloody stupid thing to call it. They'd only been there a few moments when she realised that they mirrored each other perfectly. They sat the same way, held their shoulders the same way, drank their coffee the same way, in perfect synchronicity. If ever there were two people who were meant to be together, it was them. Drew, do you ever wish you could go back in time and change the past? He laughed, not the reaction she'd been expecting. That's so strange. I was just having exactly the same conversation with Sarah. That was a terrifying thought. Being on the same wavelength as Sarah Gold was a milestone she did not ever want to reach in life. Oh, really? How come? Drew shrugged. I don't know. Just getting a little melancholic, I guess. She processed and dismissed his explanation as being of no consequence. Sarah was no threat to this situation. The poor woman hadn't been in Drew's league since the 70s. Mona pushed her sunglasses up onto her head, allowing Drew to see her eyes for the first time. He was visibly shocked. Mona, you okay? You look like you've... Have you been crying? His astonishment wasn't a surprise. He'd only seen her cry once in her life, and that was that morning in 2004 when they called time on their marriage. Even thinking back to that day made her nauseous. In fact, the red-rimmed eyes hadn't been caused by tears, but a sleepless night, spent alternating between fretting about her situation and listening to Piers wandering around the cabin. It seemed like insomnia was the theme of the night. However, the tears explanation worked just fine. Sympathy and concern were welcome if they helped her cause. True, I can't stand it. Honestly, I can't stand being married to him for another day. I'm sorry, darling, he said softly. Darling? He used to call her that all the time when they were married. He fell silent again, waiting for her to open up some more. You know, the other day, I said I wanted to divorce Piers and find someone new. I wasn't being strictly honest with you. He looked justifiably confused. So you don't want to divorce him now? Yes, I do, but I don't want to be with someone new. It was a tad disconcerting that he sat back in his chair and laughed. Mona, you can't be single. You're not cut out that way. I've never met a sexier, smarter woman, and you like to be in a relationship so that you're reminded of those things every day. It's who you are. This was good. He'd just confirmed that she was the sexiest and smartest woman he knew. Excellent start. Nice bait. Now she just had to reel him in. I know that, but honestly, the thought of starting again horrifies me. I know what I want. The right man who fulfills me on every level. who gets me and buys into a future with us both blazing a trail. She checked to see that he was still hanging on her every word. Yep, engrossed. Okay, here goes. Back straight, chest forward, jawline at highest position to flatter facial contours. True, the only man I want to be with is you. I don't want anyone else. You're not happy with Tess, and I'm not happy with Piers, and I know it's because we should still be together. There is no better team than you and me. You know that. You do, Drew. Deep down, you know. Nothing happened. For what seemed like several hours, he sat there, blank. She was about to check him for vital signs when he finally leaned over, tenderly took her face in his hands, and kissed her with joy and relief. Actually, that last bit only happened in her head. In reality, when he eventually snapped out of his full-function paralysis, he let out a prolonged, aching groan. Oh, Mona, this isn't good. It is good. It's great, she wanted to shout, but something stopped her. Her stomach tightened with a horrible, unfathomable premonition of what he was about to say. No, he couldn't. If he rejected her now, her life was over. No Drew, no job, no credibility, no future. Mona, I love you. She could feel the weight of the but that was about to come. But we don't belong together anywhere except in the boardroom. There is no other woman, forget that, no other person I would rather work with than you. But we want different things. We don't, she gasped, and immediately raged with herself. She would not argue for a man's love, not even Drew. We do, he said, almost regretfully. Over the last few months, I've realised that my work-life balance is completely messed up. I'm going to cut down my hours at the paper. Work less, spend more time with family. And when I go home at night, I don't want to discuss current affairs and be mentally stimulated. I want to relax, see the kids, play with Lawrence and Lavinia, read, chill. I've made an absolute balls of things over the last while, and I can see now that I need to fix it. We don't belong together, Mona. I want to work with you until the day I hang my jacket up, but that's where we're best together, not at home. He ran his fingers through his hair, something he only did when he was ultra-stressed. Then he leaned over and touched her face. I'll always love you, Mona, but I have to go. Where? To talk to my wife. Her eyes didn't even follow him as he left. Instead, they closed, partly to stem the real tears that were threatening to flow, and partly because her brain was now going into frantic emergency disaster recovery mode. He didn't want her, and his professional ethics would prevent him from helping her by stopping the story. It was over. Her life and everything she'd ever worked for was over. No one would employ her. No one would be attracted to a joke. No one would take her on knowing that she was an object of derision for the whole nation. She was done. Unless there was only one other option. Piers. Sure, it would be tough when the story came out, but they'd weather the storm. It wasn't like she was the only one who'd been unfaithful. Anyway, hadn't he told Emily the Frump that it was over and said something about hoping it wasn't too late? Well, it wasn't. He was going to have to brace himself for the downside of that. For better, for worse, stuff that they promised each other in front of 500 illustrious guests, and she was going to have to suck it up and stay married to him. At least for the time being. No one would believe that Piers Delaney's wife would be capable of those things. No one would dare to labour the point for fear of incurring Piers's wrath. Hell, Piers would buy every edition of the Sunday News and make sure that the paper, not her reputation, was pulped. It was her only option. In a couple of years, when this had all blown over, they could quietly divorce, and they could both go and find partners that would truly make them happy. Pulling her sunglasses back down over her eyes, She got up and headed for the lifts. She hoped Piers was around somewhere, because this was about to become his lucky day. Tess. Tess reread the note again. One more day. Tomorrow. Monaco. In the square at noon. Please come. See. Kiss, kiss. Her stomach was churning, actually flipping over. One more day. How was she going to handle this? Tomorrow was Drew's birthday, a day they both should be excited about, and yet all other feelings were being squashed to death by the big fat ball of apprehension currently shuttling between her stomach and her throat. Thankfully, it was around the voice box area when Drew burst back into the room, stopping her from screaming as she swiftly thrust the letter under the mattress. She got up from the bed and made her way downstairs from the mezzanine, stopping halfway when she saw his expression. "What's wrong? What's happened?" she asked fearfully. He looked positively panicked. "Nothing. Well, no, maybe something. I don't know. I need to talk to you." That ball of apprehension just got bigger. Drew was never like this. He was Mr. Calm, middle names Cool and Control. He reached up for her hand and then guided her down and over to the dining table before taking the seat across from her. What is it?" This was starting to get seriously troubling. "Tess, I can't do it." "Do what?" "Have more children. I'm so sorry. I wish that I could, but my time for that has passed. I don't want to start all that again. Not even for you." She absorbed what he was saying with a deep sadness. "I know." "You do?" She nodded. "I've always known. And there's no point in me screaming or shouting about it because you were always upfront about it. I didn't expect you to change your mind, even when I was giving you the ultimatum last night. I knew you wouldn't change your mind. But I felt I had to try." He got up from his chair and took 2 bottles of fresh orange juice from the fridge, putting one down in front of her. "So, where does that leave us, Tess? I feel like we're 2 different people now, looking for 2 different things." "What do you want?" she asked him, trying to keep her voice calmer than she was feeling inside. He pushed both hands through his hair, a gesture of exasperation that she'd never seen in him before. "I don't know. I'm going to make changes. I'm going to work less, relax more, find some kind of healthy balance before it's too late." That should be great news, but somehow it didn't feel like a complete victory. "Are you doing that for me or for you?" That was it. That was the crunch of the whole situation. Was she a consideration in his life, or was she just a bystander to everything Drew Gold would ever decide to do? The question took him by surprise, and as always he paused before answering. Tess knew he wouldn't lie. It wasn't in his DNA, even though they both suddenly realized that so much was riding on his answer. "I'm doing it for me," he said slowly, his voice thick with regret. "But that doesn't mean I don't love you, Tess, because I do. I won't lie to you, though, even if it's to say what I know you want to hear." She smiled sadly. Integrity really is overrated, you know. His fingers were coiling around hers now. "I still think we can make this work," he said, "but I understand if it's not enough. So now it's my turn to ask you to think about our future. There will be more time for us. We'll be able to do things, go places, travel, experience new things, live good lives. But a family will never be part of the picture." She unravelled her fingers from his as conflicting thoughts crashed in her head. She loved this man, and he was finally going to have time for her. The life he was describing sounded like the kind of existence that many people dreamed of. No financial worries, no stress, lots of fun, with a partner who loved her. A month ago, she would have been jumping up and down with happiness at this. Yet now, she wasn't sure. It wasn't just the barrier to having a family, because that had been there for a long time. It was more, a shift. A realization that she had never been top of the importance list for the man that she married. Hell, she wasn't even sure that she was in the top 3. She wanted this to work, she really did. There had never been a single doubt that she loved Drew Gold from the minute she met him. He was everything she'd ever wanted in a bloke. Except there, present, by her side. The question now, though, was no longer whether he loved her enough. It was whether she wanted the future that he described. Chapter 18. Sunsets at Sea. Mona. If ever Piers had the requirement for one last meal before a life-ending moment, Mona was sure he would want to have it here. The Steak Grill restaurant was his idea of heaven, with traditional wooden panelling on the walls, beautiful table linens, expensive crockery, and crystal glasses that sparkled. It was lush, indulgent without being too pretentious, and it served cold beer and hot T-bones. It was perfect. As they were shown to their table, she noticed that he actually looked quite dashing tonight. He'd decided to wear a suit, which was unlike him on holiday. His dress sense could definitely be hit or miss. He'd even come back from that day in Palma wearing swim shorts with bloody chickens on them. Oh, the mortification. It had taken her a while to get over that one. She was a respected fashionista, and she was married to a man who had chickens covering his balls. The thought made her shudder. "All right, love?" he asked. "Yes, just deciding I'm not having chicken tonight." "Good move. Go for the steak. It's a speciality, and I've heard it's out of this world. You look beautiful tonight, by the way." "Thank you." It wasn't a surprise. She'd spent all day in the salon getting ready for this, and she knew she had never looked better. They'd worked miracles with her eyes, which were now a smoky charcoal. Her complexion was flawless, and her raven hair pulled back into a classic chignon. But it was her dress that stole the show. A white strapless sheath with a corset-style top that enhanced her curves, before clinging to every contour all the way down to her calves. It was so tight her steps were limited to 10-inch spans, but it was worth it. She'd been planning on wearing it tomorrow night to Drew's birthday party, but now that tonight had suddenly become the most important night of her life, she'd decided to deploy every weapon in her armory. This was it. The night she would either hold on to her life or lose everything, and losing wasn't an option she was prepared to consider. Mona never came to a table without a game plan, and tonight the strategy was clear. Reconnect with Piers, reaffirm that their marriage was solid, warn him about the story. If he pulled the outraged infidelity card, then she would bring up Emily. It was that simple. They would kiss, make up, and agree to put the mistakes on both sides behind them. The end. They stuck to small talk through the starters. Salmon skewers for Mona, teriyaki chicken rolls for Piers, and main courses, Caesar salad and steak. It was all very amiable and pleasant, not sparkling and fun, but then it was Piers. He didn't do anything that remotely resembled fun to her. They passed on desserts in favour of Irish coffees in elaborate glass mugs, and it was only then that Mona felt the time was right to talk. To her surprise, she realised that she was uncharacteristically nervous, yet she had no idea why. Surely this was a foregone conclusion. "Piers, I need to talk to you." He put his coffee down and met her gaze with an unreadable expression. "That sounds serious." "It probably is. Look, I know things haven't been great between us, but I want you to know that I'm happy being married to you, and I want to make it better. I really do." His face went from unreadable to surprise to something darker that she couldn't quite pinpoint. She reached over for his hand, but he slid it away as he sat back in his chair. "Why?" he asked simply. That was one question she hadn't prepared for, and it threw her. "What do you mean?" "Why do you want to make it better? What's happened?" Nothing. Why would you say that?" This was not going according to plan at all. Slowly, Piers removed his napkin from his lap and put it on the table with a gesture of resignation.
Mona, I wasn't going to have this conversation until we got back home, but since you're bringing it up now, let's just get real. You don't want to be married to me. We both know it's over. What is puzzling me is why you seem to have had a change of heart.
A frisson of fear crept around her neck, and she suddenly found it hard to breathe. No, it's not over, Piers. It's not. Sure, we've had problems, but that's hardly unusual. Nothing we can't fix. I love you. She added a definite tone to the last two words, hoping that he didn't realize how hard it was for her to say. Bullshit had never been her strong point, but she had to try and make him believe it. He stared at her for a long time, oblivious to the waiter who was floating around, desperate to be of service. Eventually, Dimas, Grease, went off and catered to another table. After an interminable silence, her gut wrenching at the thought of her future hanging in the balance, he finally spoke.
You don't love me, Mona.
The panic was strangling her now. I do.
How many other men have you slept with since we were married?
A physical slap across the face couldn't have made her reel any further back. What? Piers was still deadly calm.
How many? You can give it to me in dozens if that makes it easier.
That was it. Desperate and needy didn't sit well with her, and since he was clearly going on the attack, there was no way she was just going to sit there and take it. Her temper flared white-hot, sending her, as always, into a state of deadly menace.
Do not dare come over all sanctimonious on me, she hissed. It's not like you haven't been banging your secretary for the last year. What did you do? Wow her with cash? You might at least have bought her a pair of decent shoes.
She braced herself for the explosion, but it never came. Now she knew why he was revered as one of the best negotiators in the corporate sector. This calm, icy demeanour obviously came from his business head. For a second she longed for the other loud, rambunctious Piers.
Now, Mona, play nice, he replied coldly. Because if we're going to get really personal, then I would have to point out that A, you might want to stop shagging guys too close to home because I hear you've been through half the 25-year-olds in Glasgow. And B, you left your earrings in the cabin of that American bloke you've been screwing since we came aboard. He returned them yesterday. I offered him 20 quid as thanks for taking the time to bring them back. He took it.
She froze, stunned, while he, completely nonplussed, signalled to Dimas Grease for the bill.
So I think this is what they call a stalemate, Mona. Neither of us gets the upper hand, neither of us comes out of this smelling of roses. The only thing I will say is that I didn't go near Emily until you were on your 4th or 5th little escapade. I think it was Danny, the 22-year-old soap star.
Oh, holy fuck. How does he know all of this? And he was still speaking.
The only thing puzzling me is why the change of heart. Why are you suddenly coming over all Mother Teresa and looking to patch things up? What happened? Between the American and the way you've been hitting on Drew all week, I'd have thought our marriage was the last thing on your mind. Did Drew knock you back?
He clearly meant the last comment as a parting dig, but immediately saw by her reaction that he'd got it absolutely right.
My God, that's what happened. He did.
In her head, Mona could hear the noise a slap would make when it hit his face. This couldn't be happening. She burned with fury and fear. It couldn't be. There was too much at stake, too much to lose. She had to have one last try, even if it would shred every last piece of her dignity. Piers, I know I've been stupid. I know I have, and I'm so sorry. But you have to forgive me. I heard you on the phone the other day, calling it off with her, saying that you knew what you wanted and you just hoped it wasn't too late. It isn't too late for us, Piers. There, she'd said it. However, this just seemed to completely baffle him. It took a few seconds for comprehension to enter the picture, and then it quickly turned to weariness.
You're right, Mona. I do know what I want now. But I wasn't talking about you.
Sarah. Sarah lay awake, fully engrossed in the last few chapters of her book. She'd wandered around Genoa for a few hours in the morning, then had a panini and strong coffee for lunch in a quaint little street cafe. After returning to the ship, she had spent the afternoon in the peaceful surroundings of the library, where she'd finished her Tasmina Perry and then come across a Marian Keyes novel that she hadn't read. That solved the question of what to do for the rest of the day. It had been absolute bliss. No drama, no tension, just the quiet calm of Sarah, Marian, and a sodding big comfy chair in a gorgeous room full of silent people. Now, lying in bed, a niggle interrupted her thoughts, and she checked her watch. Midnight. Eliza was supposed to have been back half an hour ago. Her daughter had loved every single minute of this holiday, and she was obviously trying to wangle a little more enjoyment time. 16 was a tough age, old enough to marry, mature enough to make most of her own decisions, yet still having to work within the parameters set by her parents. Sarah had hoped to spend more time with Eliza this week, but she'd been rejected on almost every request. She knew it was nothing personal. She and Patsy had spent hours staring at the telephone at that age waiting for the boys of the moment to call. Back to the book. She read another couple of chapters and then checked her watch again. 12:30. This wasn't good. Eliza occasionally wandered in 5 minutes late, but this was taking it too far. She tried her daughter's mobile phone, straight to answering machine. Trying not to panic, she ran through a list of plausible explanations. The first one being that the mobile phone was out of charge. Yeah, that explained it. Eliza never wore a watch, so used her phone to check the time. If it was off, then she wouldn't realise it was so late and therefore wouldn't think to call. A perfectly logical explanation. Utterly reasonable. And while she was telling herself that, she was out of bed and throwing on clothes, while fighting to regain some semblance of calm. Pulling on her Uggs, she listened for the sound of footsteps coming down the corridor. Nothing. Okay, this wasn't the end of the world. It would be fine. Absolutely fine. She'd find Eliza, and in an hour's time they'd be tucked up in bed laughing about this, after she'd murdered her for making her worry. Grabbing her phone, she jotted down, "Gone to look for you, call me on mobile if you get in before I'm back," on a piece of paper and left it on her pillow. Outside the cabin, she realised she had absolutely no idea which way to go. Think logically. Where would she be? And why hadn't she got one of those sat-nav chips put in her daughter when she got the labradoodle done? Think. Nightclub. Eliza had been going to the teen nightclub every night. Sarah ran to the elevator bank and checked the ship map. Deck 10. Inside the lift, she banged on the number and then whispered, come on, as the lift rose at the slowest possible pace. Or maybe it just felt like that. When the doors opened, she was already in motion, sprinting out and down the corridor in the direction she'd memorized from the map. Finally, the silver doors of the venue were in sight, and she checked herself. Take a deep breath. Do not go running in there, or Eliza will never forgive you. Be calm, act nonchalant, threaten her with a lifetime locked in her bedroom only when you get her to a place of solitude and safety. Just as she was about to pull the door open, a huge man pushed out from the inside, and Sarah realised what was missing. Music. "Can I help you?" The Incredible Hulk asked her nicely. "I'm looking for my daughter, Eliza." His brow furrowed in thought. "Very tall, blonde, Scottish, usually comes in with a guy called Kai?" "Yes. Oh, thank God. "Sorry, but they weren't in tonight. We've just closed, so I don't expect they'll show up now. Can I help you search for her?" Sweet guy, but the last thing she wanted to do was turn this into a full-scale ship drama. "No, it's fine. Thank you. I'm sure she's just off enjoying herself and didn't notice the time." Yes, that was it. For sure. Turning on her heel, she realized that her brain was now completely ignoring the direct order not to freak out. Breathe. Breathe. Right, start from the top. Literally. Not prepared to wait for the lift, she ran up to deck 15 and checked the ocean view. No Eliza. She scoured the rest of the deck. No sign of her. Deck 14. She checked the wave pool, all the loungers, interrupting a couple who definitely were not playing Scrabble under that blanket, the obstacle course, and even peeked in the church. No sign, but she did say a quick prayer for holy intervention while she dangled down to look under the pews. No deck 13. Unlucky for some. It would be bloody unlucky for Eliza when she found her. Her heart immediately wrestled control from the bravado section of her brain. Please be okay. Please be okay. The public areas on deck 12 were practically deserted, making the search quicker, but just as fruitless. On deck 11, she popped her head into every restaurant, bar, and even the gym. Nothing. Deck 10, deck 9, deck 8, deck 7, deck 6. By deck 5, she was close to passing out. Eliza was nowhere to be found. She must have gone to that boy's cabin, despite strict instructions not to. Surely his parents wouldn't allow that. What was his cabin number? Eliza had definitely said something about deck 12, hadn't she? Back in the lift, she counted to 100 as it rose upwards, then darted out as soon as the doors opened. "Good evening, madam. Can I help you?" said a girl behind the desk, whose name badge said she was called Kalita Brazil. "Yes, I'm looking for my daughter, Eliza Gold." "Ah, Mr. Gold's daughter." "You've seen her?" "Yes, oh yes, yes." "Yes, ma'am. She stayed with Mr. Gold a couple of nights ago, when we left Naples, I believe." Oh, not the answer she was looking for, but it was a start. "Have you seen her tonight? I believe her boyfriend Kai lives on this floor." "Yes, but I'm afraid they haven't been here tonight. Mr. and Mrs. Latham are in their suite. But Kai has not yet returned this evening. Shall I call Mr. and Mrs. Latham for you?" Sarah weighed that up for a second, before shaking her head. No point in worrying another set of parents just yet. But if she hadn't found Eliza in the next 20 minutes, she would. But they had to find her. She'd be fine. She was here. She wasn't overboard, or kidnapped, or... Oh, God, this was getting worse by the minute. "No, thank you. I'm just going to pop along to see Mr. Gold." "Of course. Please let me know if I can help you." Sarah didn't even hear the rest of the sentence. She was already flying in the direction of Drew's room. She hammered on the door, forgetting that it was now 2 a.m. Eventually, a very dishevelled Tess answered the door. "Tess, have you seen Eliza? I've searched the ship and she's not here and she could be overboard. Oh, shit, what if she fell over? What if—" "Sarah, hey, it's okay." Tess's arms wrapped around her and gently pulled her inside. "We'll find her. Don't worry. Let me get some shoes. I'll help you. Drew?" Her husband was already halfway down the stairs from the bedroom. "What's up?" "It's Eliza. She didn't come home. I've searched everywhere, Drew. The whole ship." Tears were now flowing down Sarah's face. If anything happened to Eliza, she'd never forgive herself. She shouldn't have let her go out alone. She should have stayed with her every minute of the holiday. She should definitely have got her bloody microchipped. He was already pulling on his second shoe and a sweatshirt over his bare chest. His urgency panicked her even more. "Hang on, I'll phone Max," Tess said, picking up the handset. "Max, it's Tess. Have you seen Eliza?" "No?" "Okay, I'll buzz your dad." "Oh, well, can you ask him then?" "Thanks. Are you sure? That would be great. We're just about to start searching now." She placed the phone back in the cradle. "Piers is staying the night in Max's room for some reason, and neither of them have seen her. He's going to call Mona to check if she's seen her, and then they're coming to help us look for her." Sarah couldn't compute half of that statement, but she didn't have time to ponder it. By the time they got to Kalita's reception desk, the other two men were there, worried and eager to help. "Right, let's be organised about this," Drew said. "How long is it since you left your room, Sarah?" "I don't know. About an hour? More?" "Okay, give me your key. Max and Piers, can you start at 15 and work your way down? Tess, you go with Sarah to 5 and work your way up. I'll check the room and get John out to come help us search." She won't be there, Drew. I left a note telling her to phone if she got back, and she hasn't. Drew, where is she? We'll find her, trust me. It was so stupid, but just hearing him say that made her feel just a little bit better. They'd find her. Drew said so. They all ran in their designated directions, all the way down the stairs. Tess held Sarah's hand, repeatedly reassuring her that this was going to end well. It had to. God, it had to. At Deck 5, they ran along the so-called main street between the shops. No sign. They were about to head up to 6 when Sarah's phone rang. Drew. Sarah, I've got her. She's in the cabin. Relief. Huge, big, bloody tsunamis of relief washed over her until her legs jellified and she slumped against the wall. But why didn't she? I'll explain when you get here. She's in the cabin. Drew's got her. Tess hugged her, both of them with faces flooded with tears. You go, and I'll call off the others. Go, go, Tess urged her. She didn't need to be told twice. She ran all the way, bursting in the door of the cabin to see a concerned Drew standing over horizontal Eliza, who was lying face down on Sarah's bed, sound asleep. But she didn't call. Sarah, can you smell that? Sarah stopped, sniffed. Booze. Drew nodded. I think our little darling has just had her first boozy night out. Sarah rushed over and checked Eliza's vital signs, her pulse, her pupils. She was about to switch her panic from missing teenager to alcohol-poisoned teenager when Eliza smiled in her sleep before adjusting herself into a comfier position. I don't think she's in too bad a state. She managed to get her pajamas on. Backwards, Sarah noticed, a smile finding her lips for the first time in hours. Drew, I was so scared. I know, he said, wrapping his arms around her. Do you remember when John did the same thing? School disco. He was 15. Cider. He grinned. I'll phone Tess and tell her I'm staying here tonight. I'll take Eliza's bed. I've got a feeling we might have a sick girl at some point during the night. And as Sarah pulled a blanket over her daughter, she couldn't help but feel thankful that he was there, just like he used to be. Tess. Tess found Max and Piers at the entrance to the casino on Deck 10. They found her, she told them, grinning. Drew just called to say that she's asleep and they think she might have had 1 or 2 drinks. Ouch, Max replied. I'm thinking that's not going to seem like it was such a good idea in the morning. I remember the first time you got pissed, Piers interjected, before turning to Tess. Brought a team of pals up to my house, then drank my bar dry. I grounded him for a month. I was 22 at the time, Max joked. They made their way down to Deck 12, and suddenly going back to an empty cabin didn't hold much appeal. Do you two want to come in for a drink? Don't feel much like sleeping now. Too much adrenaline. Drew's staying with Sarah and Eliza, so it's going to be beer for 1 if you don't join me. Was that a shameless attempt to guilt us into coming with you? Piers said cheekily. Absolutely. Then make mine a Budweiser, purely to help you out, you understand? In the suite, the 3 of them lounged on the sofas, swapping stories about the week. Tess was dying to ask why Piers was staying with Max, but it was none of her business. She made a mental note to ask Drew in the morning. Mona didn't sneeze without him knowing about it. Right, you two, I'm off to make some phone calls. I've got a pal in New York I want to speak to, so I might as well take advantage of being up at this bloody time of night. How much her opinion of Piers had changed this week. She'd gone from being slightly intimidated by him to discovering that he was one of the loveliest, most generous, funniest men she'd ever met. I'll be along shortly, Dad. I'll just finish my beer and let you get your call over with. As the door closed softly behind Piers, Tess poured another drink before curling back onto the sofa and pulling her feet up under her. I searched a ship in my pyjamas tonight, she said, gesturing to her grey marl jersey trousers and white t-shirt. That's not a sentence I ever thought I'd say. Max's nose crinkled up when he smiled. She liked that about him. So, how are things going with Drew? Did you work stuff out? She stared into her wine. Nope, it's not going great. She tried to flavour her reply with a light-hearted tone, but it didn't work, and she could see that Max didn't want to probe. I wanted him to work less, and he's agreed to that now. Should be a win, right? It's what I've been wanting for a long time. But now other things have come up that I didn't expect. When we met, I knew he didn't want more children, and I agreed to that, but now I'm not so sure. I thought I was happy, but I don't think I am. I thought we were perfect together, but... That one hung in the air, a foregone conclusion that she couldn't quite bring herself to say out loud. What do your family and friends think? I haven't said anything to my mum and dad. I don't want them to worry, and my mother would. She'd have Bolivian customs officers phoning me to check how I'm doing. What about your friends? She shrugged. All my girlfriends love him because he's got that charm that just wins everyone over. Max nodded at that. Drew's charisma wasn't exactly a closely guarded secret. Only my friend Cameron has reservations. Why? He thinks he doesn't treat me well enough. He thinks... She stopped herself. Thinks what? He asked. The pain as her teeth sunk into her bottom lip made her flinch. Must stop doing that. Must stop doing that. Suddenly she felt exhausted with the weight of the whole situation. If only her mum was here and she could discuss it with her. Or a girlfriend. Or Cameron. Before he turned all secret admirer, borderline stalker on her. But they weren't here. Max was. She made a split-second decision based on nothing but optimism that she knew him well enough to judge his character. He could keep a secret. She was sure of it. He was trustworthy and he was smart. And right now, he was the only person who could make sense of all this before 12 noon tomorrow when a good-looking Scottish bloke would be standing in the middle of a square in Monte Carlo waiting for her. Decision made. She reached into her bag and pulled out the notes, then handed the first one over to Max and watched as his face shadowed with confusion. Cameron has been my best friend for years. We spend almost every day together. The day before we left to come here, he told me that he loved me, wanted me to leave Drew, that we weren't right for each other, that he could make me happier than my husband. What did you do? Asked him to leave, raged, denied everything, but he was partially right. Then we came on board and I got that. She gestured to the note. Tess, I'm sorry about that conversation, but I meant every word I said. Require future discussion. I hope you agree. I'm owed some time off, so have decided to take a break. Checked the ship's itinerary and have an idea. Meet me in Monaco on the day you dock there. I'll be in the square at noon. See, kiss. And then this one arrived a couple of days later. She handed over the second note. Tess, I'm sorry to do this, but I had to write again in case you thought I'd sent yesterday's note when I was confused. Or pished. I hope that you've had time to think about what I said. Meet me when you dock in Monaco. I'll be in the square at noon. See, kiss. He sounds like a funny guy who loves you, Max said. There's more, she replied, handing over the next two notes. Tess, no pressure. I know this must be coming over as crazy. I'll totally understand if you don't show up, and I promise we'll always be mates even if you don't come. I'm hoping you've discovered that you miss me. If you do, then please, meet me in Monaco. In the square at noon. See, kiss. Missing you. No one to share my donuts with. Meet me in Monaco. I'll bring the ones with sprinkles. See, kiss, kiss. And then, finally today, this one came. One more day. Tomorrow. Monaco. In the square at noon. Please come. See, kiss, kiss. Wow, was all Max could muster. What's she going to do? I don't know. I honestly don't. Please don't say anything about this, Max, she pleaded. I won't, I promise. He got up and rescued another beer from the fridge, topping up her wine glass in the process. Do you love him? Cameron, I mean. Yes? she blurted, and then immediately clarified. I mean, I love him as a friend, and we make each other so happy. Life's easy with Cameron. It's fun, unpredictable, and we laugh all the time. But I've never thought of him as more than a friend, so do I love him? In that way? She pondered the answer to her own question. I really don't know. There was a long, loaded pause before Tess shook her head. You must think I'm a complete nightmare. I promise there's usually no drama in my life. I don't have men queuing at the door. Until a couple of weeks ago, I thought my future was all mapped out. Life has a way of booting you in the arse the minute you think you've got it sussed, Max said solemnly. Were those words of wisdom, Master Yoda? Indeed, he laughed, before a moment of contemplation descended. Do you want my advice, or am I here just to listen? Advice, she said firmly. Definitely advice. I think you need to sort things out with Drew before you even let Cameron into the picture. She let that one sit for a minute as she thought about it. He was right. She knew that. It was impossible to contemplate any kind of relationship with anyone else until she knew what was happening in her marriage. How'd you get so smart about these things? He did a mock bow. Tess thought he was just going to laugh it off. In the week they'd spent together, he'd never gone into any detail about what happened in his marriage. My wife left me. Met someone else. Said I worked too long hours and I wasn't invested in our marriage. Sound familiar? He said it without a trace of bitterness, just sad acceptance. That's why Dad hates her, because he saw me at my worst, when she'd just gone and I was devastated. The irony is she left me for my business partner, and he always worked even longer hours than me. Not anymore. Tess pulled a cushion from the sofa into her chest and leaned her chin on it as she listened. I asked her to come back time after time. Said I'd change, get it right, make her a priority, but she refused. And how are you now? Max nodded. I'm doing okay. I can talk about it without anesthetic. I actually think she did the right thing. We'd been together since we were in uni, and I think if she hadn't left, we'd have lived together forever in a kind of bland union that had settled into a rut about 60 years before its time. What's her name? Tess had no idea why that was important, but she wanted to know this woman, understand her, and a name would be a start. Belinda. Although, according to Dad, that gets shortened to Cow. It was Tess's turn to top up the drinks this time, and she added in a couple of packets of crisps to the proceedings. She emptied them into a bowl, and then moved over onto Max's sofa so that they could share them. Do you still want her back? She asked, crunching a salt and vinegar hula hoop. No, but I just wish that she had given us a chance to resolve things before she moved on. Just a chance. I thought we deserved that. You did. It struck her. He did. And Drew deserved that chance too. Except the heat of Max's breath, only a few inches away from her face, was having a strange effect on her. She must be drunk, or giddy due to inhaling salt and vinegar fumes. Suddenly, and totally unexpectedly, she had to fight the urge to kiss him. Blinking away the notion, she moved back to the other couch. What the hell was wrong with her? Were 2 complicated relationships not enough to be going on with? Please tell me he didn't notice. She searched his face for signs of discomfort, but there were none, just a chilled-out expression of care and contentment. She threw up a thanks to the gods of, oh crap, I nearly kissed someone and it would have been totally inappropriate. So, what are you going to do tomorrow? He asked. 3 hula hoops came between the question and the answer. I don't know. I honestly don't know.
End of CD 7. CD 8.
Chapter 19. Meet me in Monaco. Sarah. Sarah pulled open the curtains and threw open the balcony doors, letting the warm morning air cut through the cool of the air conditioning. She'd have burst into a chorus of "The sun has got his hat on" if it weren't for the fact that she didn't want to risk waking the twins next door. On the bed, Eliza groaned and pulled a pillow over her head. Sarah immediately removed it and sang, "Good morning, darling," in her highest, cheeriest voice. Eliza groaned again. "You're going to make the most of this one, aren't you?" Drew mused, laughing. He'd slept on their sofa so he could help if Eliza was ill during the night. Thankfully, she hadn't been. "Oh, yes. After the fright that I got last night, this girl will pay. Revenge will be merciless. It's the only way to ensure that she doesn't do it again." The fact that she was giggling as she said it diluted the severity of her words down from ominous to teasing. "Eliza! Eliza, darling," she chirped loudly. This time her daughter managed to get one eye open and recover some of her powers of speech. "Don't feel well." "Yes, dear, I can understand that. I'm not a medical professional, but my official diagnosis is that this condition you're experiencing is a result of— what's the medical term, Drew? Oh, yes, coming home pissed." The chilling revelation dawned on Eliza, and she attempted to sit bolt upright, only to fall back down again. In the midst of the failed act, she absorbed the fact that Drew was there. "Dad?" "Yes, your father is here because you went missing last night. We had to call in the Italian police, and the Coast Guard only called off their search half an hour ago." Behind her, she heard Drew swallow a chuckle. "Honestly?" Eliza's voice was thick with fear. "No, but you're in so much trouble you're going to wish that there was police protection involved." "I'm so sorry, Mum," Eliza mumbled. "And you too, Dad. Man, it's so weird seeing you both in the same room." "I'll leave you with that sunny thought while you go shower and brush your teeth twice," Sarah remarked lightly. "Right now I'm going up to watch this ship sail into Monte Carlo. When I come back, we're going to discuss every form of punishment known to man, and then your dad and I will discuss which one we will use. Personally, I'm leaning towards putting a video of you throwing up during the night onto Facebook." "You didn't record that?" Eliza gasped. "Shall we save that one for her wedding reception instead? What do you think, Drew?" He could no longer even pretend not to be finding this hilarious. "I think I'm glad I'm not on your bad side. Hang on, I'll come upstairs with you. In fact, why not come and watch the docking from our suite? We're right at the front, so we've got a great view." Despite the fact that she'd much rather stick to her morning routine of watching the ship sail into port while sipping her morning coffee on deck 15, it was difficult to say no without hurting his feelings. "Eliza, you and I are going to have a chat later on. I'll wait until after your mother has tortured you for a while longer." Eliza managed another long, pained grunt as her parents left, causing them to grin all the way to deck 10, where they picked up a pot of coffee before heading on up to Drew's suite on deck 12. The lovely Kalita Brazil was still at the desk. Did she never go home? "Ah, good morning," she greeted them. "Did you find your daughter?" "We did, thank you, Kalita," Drew answered, then held open the door to their corridor. When they reached the room, the first thing Sarah noticed was the empty glasses, beer bottles, and crisp bowls. There was obviously a party here last night, and for a moment she was sad she missed it. The only light in the room came from a gap in the curtains, but it was enough to see that up on the mezzanine there was a large bump in the bed. Tess was still sleeping. Sarah did a quick calculation. They hadn't got back to the cabin until well after 2 a.m., so if Tess had then had a bit of a party, she'd probably only been in bed for not much more than a couple of hours. "Shall I go? I don't want to wake her. I can just take this upstairs," she whispered, motioning to the coffee pot she was holding. Drew shook his head. "No, it's fine. Tess could sleep through an earthquake. We'll just go out on the balcony." Silently, he grabbed a couple of mugs from the table, then they slipped out into the sunlight, closing the door over behind them. It was only when they were sitting watching the stunning panorama of Monte Carlo getting closer and closer that Sarah remembered. "Drew! Happy birthday! Oh, I'm so sorry. With all the drama, I completely forgot it was today." "Thank you, and don't worry, I'd be quite happy not to be reminded that I'm now 50. "You're right, so old. Practically Jurassic." I'm absolutely sure you'll have arthritis and hair poking out of your ears by dinner time. It was good to hear him laughing. Sarah hadn't spent much time with him on this trip, but when she saw him, he always seemed to have the weight of the world on his shoulders. I miss this, Sarah. What, Monte Carlo? No, me and you, just talking. I miss you. Dumbstruck, she turned to face him. What? Drew, we've been divorced for 15 years. What is there to miss? Is this because you've turned 50? Are you having a midlife crisis and losing the plot? Humour was her only defence against a conversation that was making her just a tad uncomfortable. No. Over the last while, I just realised that I made a mistake. All of it was a huge mistake. I should never have had the affair with Mona. I'll give you that one. She's a torn-faced boot. It took a minute for him to recover from that. You're right, but she's a good person underneath all that hard stuff. Drew, don't talk nonsense. It would be quicker to dig to the Earth's core than to mine for Mona's hidden niceness. True, but the fact remains, I shouldn't have gone there. This time there was no humour in her answer. No, you shouldn't. You broke up our family. It was a mistake. Yes. They were now about 100 yards out from one of the most romantic cities in the world, yet Sarah was feeling anything but loving. Why open up old wounds? Why remind her of what she lost? I think that's why I married Tess. What? Sarah asked, astounded. It's taken me a while to realise it, but I think it was because she reminded me of you. You're alike in so many ways. I think I was trying to recreate what we had when we were 25. Did it work? She asked doubtfully. No, because I'm 50. I'm past that. I love Tess, but there's no denying that the age difference is a problem that becomes more prevalent every year. She still wants to experience life. I just want to slow down a bit and savour it. In truth, I can see now that's why it was so important to me that you were here. I knew we'd appreciate this in the same way. Her chin would have hit the floor if it wasn't engaged by the need to respond to what he'd just said. You're an idiot, she said calmly. You are so lucky to have her, Drew. She's special. She really is. I know, but Sarah's anger was rising now. Don't give me but! He matched her emotion. His normal cool, calm demeanour shed a passionate argument in its place. Tell me you don't think it too. Tell me you never wonder whether we should have stayed together. And tell me you don't think that if we were both single, we could make a real go of it. We would be good together again, Sarah. I saw how you were last night. You wanted me there. If I let Tess go, then we could be happy. Sarah jumped up, sending her chair reeling backwards. No, we couldn't! Jesus, you're such a self-centered prick, Drew. That poor girl. Oh, I want to bloody slap you. We could not be happy together. Yes, I was glad you were there last night because for once, you were actively present when something was happening with the kids, and it was good to have a bit of support. Believe me, it was a refreshing change. But do you know why we would never work? Because for the last 15 years, I've slowed down, savoured motherhood, let life go by me. But now, I'm ready to get out there and enjoy myself. In fact, if Tess has the good sense to send you packing, I might see if she wants to bloody come with me. It's about time she started to live a bit instead of spending her whole life waiting for you. With the filthiest look she could muster, she turned, slid the door open, and stormed back inside. At once, she realised that the room had changed, so she popped her head back out onto the balcony. Oh, and Romeo, your wife is no longer lying in bed. In fact, she's no longer here, so you'd better start praying she never heard any of your little speech there. Otherwise, you'll be needing a subscription to Match.com for your birthday. Arse. With that, Sarah walked out of Drew Gold's life, and it felt great. Tess. The security guard at the top of the gangplank tried not to stare at the fact she was wearing pyjamas and her hair looked like an explosion in a straw bale. Tess didn't care. She really didn't care.
bastard. Drew, not the security guard, who was, she was sure, very lovely. The moral of the morning was definitely, do not discuss your relationship when the door to where your wife is sleeping is very slightly ajar. God, had this morning really happened? She'd heard Drew and Sarah come in and stumbled out of the bed to go say hello. She got to the doors just as he was getting to the good bit. So she was just a substitute for Sarah. Standing behind the curtain, she'd heard every word, and it hurt like hell. Sod him. Sod Drew sodding gold. She'd listened right up to where Sarah told him he was a prick and she wanted to slap him. That's the kind of attitude Tess needed. It was time for her to get a bit of fight about her and start sticking up for herself. Everything made so much sense now. The disconnect in their relationship, the way he was never around, the fact that he didn't want children with her. He didn't want to spend the rest of his life with her. He was trying to convince himself as much as her that if they stayed together they'd have a great future. They'd both been kidding themselves on. It was all fake. All of it. She showed her passport at the checkpoint and headed down the gangplank, then followed the crowd around the porch of the Quai Antoine, veered right onto the Route de la Piscine, then immediately turned left and ran up the pale stone steps. A sign at the top told her she was now on the Boulevard Albert Premier, and she stopped to look around. It was exactly as she'd expected, only much, much busier. The road in front of her was already packed with gridlocked traffic. There were police everywhere, checking cars and trucks. But the views? It was spectacular. Up on the hills on the left-hand side, she could see the cream walls of the castle. To her right, high-rise buildings, most of them white, sitting side by side like a Lego village, rising up towards the hills that circled them like a protective cloak. It was beautiful. Since she was a little girl, she'd imagined coming here. She just never anticipated that she'd be wearing pyjamas and white Converse trainers with no socks. They were the first things that came to hand when she'd dashed from the suite. What a fool she'd been. No more. She pulled the map that had been left in their cabin last night from her bag, checked it, then walked briskly, following the promenade around towards the most built-up area. On her left were offices, shops, hotels. On her right, the sparkling blue waters of the seas, hundreds of gleaming white boats of all sizes in the marina, and behind them the Vistatoria, sitting proudly in her dock. The holdall on her shoulder dug into her skin, so when she saw an awning with the words "Pizza, Pasta, Coffee" on it, she crossed the road and ducked inside. It was half empty. An elderly man approached her with a smile. "Mademoiselle?" "Un café, s'il vous plaît," she said, thrilled her high school French had left its mark. While he went off to get it, she nipped into the ladies and pulled everything out of her bag. She'd just snatched the first things that came to her in the wardrobe, so she could only hope they were the makings of a decent outfit. She surveyed the choices. 1 pink mini dress, 1 blue nightdress, and a white jersey hoodie. Oh well, it was worth a try, but the pyjamas would have to stay on. At least it was sunny, and adding the hoodie made it look more casual loungewear than off for a good 8 hours kip. Rummaging in the bottom of the bag, she did, however, find a hairbrush and her makeup bag. She soaked her hair in the sink, then dried it into some kind of semblance of a style with the hand-dryer, then used some tinted moisturiser and Vaseline to tone down the stress-induced blotchy face. It was only when she was back at the table that she noticed for the first time that all eyes were on a huge screen on the wall, watching a montage of clips of a man and a beautiful woman waving at crowds. Of course! She'd read about this in Hello magazine before she left, but hadn't registered the date. One of the royal princes, she couldn't remember which one, was getting married this weekend. "Monsieur," she gestured to the friendly waiter. Le wedding?" So much for her high school French. He almost cheered his reply. "Oui, oui, aujourd'hui. Hier a été la cérémonie civile. Aujourd'hui, ils auront la cérémonie religieuse au palais." She got that. Yesterday was a civil ceremony and today was the religious ceremony at the palace.
Mrs. Catani, her ferocious French teacher, would be so proud. The clips they were showing must be from yesterday's wedding, and now they were waiting for the next service to start. Oh, the irony. She was in the Principality of Monaco on one of the most special days in its history, the momentous occasion of a royal wedding, and she was sitting there in pyjamas, auditioning to be the poster girl for divorce. Or spousal homicide. She checked her phone. 10 messages, 15 voicemails. Bugger it, she didn't care. She did, however, notice the time. 10 o'clock. 2 hours until Cameron said he'd meet her in the square. Going would be a bad idea. A really bad idea. Her life was a mess, and meeting Cameron would only complicate it. He had no right to force her hand on this. She didn't ask him to come bloody galloping all the way from Glasgow to meet her there. She didn't need rescuing. This wasn't a flipping fairy tale. No, she wasn't going. She would stay here until she'd calmed down and then go back aboard and request another room. Or stay with Max and Piers. Hell, she'd even stay with Mona if it meant she didn't have to see Drew's face again. Men were officially now a no-go area. All of them. She was done. 3 cups of coffee and a pain au chocolat later, she was still done. She was. Definitely. And she was fed up of watching reruns of the same clips on that TV. The prince and new princess arriving for yesterday's civil ceremony. The prince and princess waving to crowds. The prince and princess going walkabout. Crowds streaming into a seated area in front of the palace. Royals arriving. Superstars walking up red carpets. Prince Edward was there. Where was Victoria Beckham? Surely she'd be going. Whatever. If there was any justice, the princess would be in a back room right now, and her best pals would be telling her that there was a good bloody chance that whatever promises the prince made would turn out to be a sham, and she'd end up sitting in inappropriate clothes, crying her heart out into a bloody pain au chocolat. That was it. Enough. She was going back to the ship. No Cameron, no Drew, no... She sat back down. Cameron? He was here. He'd find this so funny. Monsieur, où est le square? She said, hoping that she got the words right. Not that she was going. No. It was just curiosity. La place du casino? Cue blank look. The casino square? He repeated in halting English. Oui. It was the first thing that came to his mind, so surely that must be the place. He picked up the map she'd left on her table and made a circle on it. Tess thanked him and paid the bill. She wasn't going. No way. Definitely not. She checked the time again. 11:40. It was too late, anyway. She'd never get there on time. Back to the ship. Turn right. Right! Turn right! Before she could stop herself, she had turned left and started running. Bugger, why weren't there any taxis? They were all watching the royal bloody wedding. She clutched at the map and started running. She followed the boulevard of Albert Premier until it merged into the Avenue d'Ostende, then slipped over to her right and kept to the promenade. The Vistatoria was on her right now, the sun bouncing off its hull. This place was like Disneyland, but without the thousands of children. Every bush was perfectly manicured, every street spotless, and every corner revealed another breathtaking building or view. Not that she had time to enjoy it, given that she was doing a Usain Bolt down the street. A sheen of sweat glistened on her face now, a perfect match for the attractiveness of her outfit. At every crossing, a galaxy of prestige cars went by. A red Lamborghini passed, a silver Bentley, a white Rolls-Royce. She experienced a sudden pang of longing for her little yellow Ford Focus. Eventually, after storming up an incline that stretched her calves to breaking point, she was there, 15 minutes past 12. Running to the middle of the road, she frantically looked around. The whole square was bedecked with white and red flags, flying from tall white poles commemorating the day. The Hotel de Paris was in front of her, the Casino de Monte Carlo to her left. Behind her, a bloke in the flashiest car she'd ever seen was beeping his horn at her. She didn't care, not a jot, because Cameron wasn't there. Mona. Where have you been? Mona asked, as Piers wandered in at 10 a.m.
I stayed with Max last night. I'll stay there tonight too, just in case you want to invite the American over. It's fine, don't mind me. And by the way, Eliza's fine. I know you were probably up all night fretting."
His calm joviality and sarcasm had the perverse effect of sending her temper soaring. Damn him. If these weren't Jimmy Choo's shoes, one of them would be getting used as a missile. "I want to know who it is."
"Who what is?"
"Who you want to be with. Since it clearly isn't me, I want to know who it is. I think I have the right to know," she demanded. Her words were bolshier than she was feeling inside.
"Mona, you don't have any rights to know anything about me anymore. But I've got nothing to hide, so I'll tell you. Sarah."
She wouldn't have been more surprised if he'd said it was the waiter who served his steak to him in the restaurant the other night. "Sarah? Sarah Gold? Are you kidding me?" He shook his head as he pulled a holdall up onto the table and started filling it with stuff from his drawer.
"No."
"But you don't even know her! You only met her this fucking week! You've lost your mind, Piers, you really have. There is no way on this earth that you are passing this up." She gestured to her body. "For that fat bint, Sarah Gold." He paused, a rolled-up pair of socks in hand, and stared at her.
"You see, Mona, that just tells you why. Sarah would never say something like that. She has absolutely no idea of how bloody fabulous she is, and that's the sexiest thing."
"Ugh!" She thrust her hands over her ears like they were being burned. "Sexy? Sarah Gold?" He'd lost his mind.
"And no, I haven't known her long, but that doesn't matter. I'm old enough and I've been around long enough to know exactly what I want in life. And I knew it that first day in Parma."
"Have you slept with her?" The notion made her want to gag.
"No."
Mona snorted. The thought of being in love with someone without even having sex was ridiculous to her. What if they were incompatible? Let's face it, Piers was a pretty highly sexed guy, whereas Sarah didn't look like she'd had an orgasm since the 80s.
"Mona, I'm not going to get into this with you. I've told Sarah how I feel. She was having none of it. She's not interested. But that doesn't change anything between you and me. So you go ahead and do whatever you want to do. Let's try to keep it civil, and we'll let the lawyers sort it out when we get home. No hard feelings, eh?"
Oh, she had plenty of hard feelings. Plenty. The wall phone rang and she snatched it from the cradle. "Mrs. Gold, the car that you ordered is waiting at the dock for you." It was her last swan song. A day in Monte Carlo shopping with Piers's credit card. She was determined to make it count. If she was going down in flames, she was going to go wearing Chanel, Yves Saint Laurent, and Bulgari. After picking up her favourite Chanel 2.55 bag, she clipped on large black pearl earrings and smoothed down her dress. It was vintage Balenciaga, a steel-coloured top with a Peter Pan collar and sleeves that finished at her elbows, with a row of tiny black buttons stretching from the neck down to the wide leather belt that pulled in her waist to impossibly small dimensions. The skirt was pencil-tight to the knee, then flared into a fishtail at the back, stopping mid-calf. It was a statement piece, and the statement was, "I'm expensive, stunning, and in this dress I'm fucking untouchable." By some power of osmosis, she sucked the attitude from the dress and without even bothering to say goodbye, strutted past Piers, giving him a back view of a body he would never touch again. His loss. The chauffeur was waiting for her at the car, wearing a beautifully cut black suit and Versace shades. They knew how to do it in style here. Inside, he checked her out in his rearview mirror as he introduced himself as Pascal, and then, in perfect English, asked her where she wanted to go. "La Place du Casino," she replied in a flawless French accent. It was the hub of the best shops in the Principality, and the most expensive. The traffic was heavy as he cut up off the Avenue d'Ostende onto the Avenue Princesse Alice, then turned right onto the Avenue des Beaux-Arts. Just as they came to a standstill behind a silver Bugatti Veyron, her mobile rang. The office. Guy. She thought about ignoring it, but what was the point? She was going to have to face it, and she might as well get it over with now and then block out the pain with some serious retail therapy. Hi, she answered, trying not to sound like she was on the journalistic equivalent of death row. Mona, I'm sorry about this, but the news has been on the phone again. They're not running the story this week because the lawyers haven't got everything signed off, but they're definitely leading with it next week. She didn't know if that was good news or bad. There was something to be said for it happening while she was out of the country. Maybe she just wouldn't go back. She could stay here until the money ran out and then get a job in Bulgari. At least her surroundings would be perfect. Right, thanks for letting me know, Guy. Are you going to defend it? We can't get it pulled, but we can run a counter-story. Threaten to sue? Go the injunction route? She sighed wearily. She'd thought of all of that, but really, what was the point? Hadn't all those super injunction scandals featuring everyone from football players to actors to bank chiefs already proved that all that happens is the lawyers get very rich and the story eventually runs anyway? Adrian was lying. She'd never used sex to blackmail him or harass him in any way. But that wasn't the point. The story made her look pathetic. A woman approaching 40 screwing a 23-year-old in her lunch hour. The jokes would run forever. No, Guy, I don't want to add any more fuel to this. Leave it. Publish and be damned. I'll tell Drew tomorrow. I'm not going to say anything to him on his birthday. Whatever you think. I'm sorry, Mona. I did what I could. She hung up, fairly sure that he hadn't done a damn thing. Guy and at least a couple of dozen other aging hacks would love every minute of this. Mona didn't ever cry. Not ever. But suddenly, she could feel tears popping inside her lids, to accompany the excruciating twisting sensation in her stomach. Her life was over. When this ran, she would be left with nothing, and the first things to disappear would be her dignity and power. One bold tear sprang free and ran down her right cheek. A pair of Tom Ford sunglasses were hastily put on to cover up her pain. At that moment, they came to a halt outside the Cartier store that sat on the corner beside the Hôtel de Paris. It was one of her favourite shops, and the perfect place to start. A trinket from here, and then she'd stroll the 50 yards or so along to Chanel. She had a few more days of being Mona Gold, the revered fashionista, and she might as well make the most of it. If this was death row, then she was about to have her last supper. Mrs. Gold, can I ask where you were planning to visit? I'll start in Cartier, Pascal. His gaze went immediately to the shop, then back to her. But, Mrs. Gold, I'm afraid that's not possible. Why? Because today is a public holiday. We have royal wedding, Mrs. Gold. The whole country is watching. Behind her Tom Fords, Mona closed her eyes and murmured an expletive under her breath. Death row sucked. This just could not get any worse. There was only one thing she could do. Drop me here, Pascal. I'll be in the bar of the Hôtel de Paris, and if you want to join me, that's absolutely fine by me. Chapter 20. What Happens in Monte Carlo. Tess. He wasn't here. She'd missed him. Or maybe he hadn't come at all. Tess slumped down onto the edge of a huge plant pot next to the steps of the casino, fully expecting one of the nice security men in very smart hats to tell her to move. It didn't matter. Cameron wasn't here. Perhaps he'd realised how stupid the whole thing was and changed his mind. Or maybe it was a joke. Well, the joke was on her because he wasn't. Are you wearing your pyjamas? He was here. She threw her head up, and there he was, standing right in front of her, clutching 2 huge ice creams. I didn't think you were coming, so I went over there to get a cone, and then I was just about to pay for it when I saw you. Thought you might want one too. It's chocolate chip. No donuts. What a pish place, eh? Tess had no idea whether she was laughing or crying, but there were tears, and then his arms were around her, and suddenly everything felt so much better, even if she did drop her chocolate chip ice cream. He held on to her tightly, burying his face in her hair, yet she still heard him whisper, "I'm so glad you came. I so wanted you to be here." Pulling back, she realised that this was no place to say the things that needed to be said. "Come on, let's go find somewhere to sit," she told him, taking his hand and leading the way up to the Allée des Boulingrins, the beautiful garden area that swept up the hill in front of them. They found seats on the steps beside the fountain, and for a moment they were both too stunned to speak. "Come on, this is Cameron. It shouldn't feel weird." "I don't know whether to hug you or—" "Oh, wow, this is so surreal. Those notes! Cameron, the notes! What the hell were you thinking?" she asked, her words hard but her tone gentle. "I just wanted to get you here. It worked, didn't it?" He grinned that incorrigible grin that won her over every time. This felt like it should be a movie moment, the big romantic ending that saw the heroine get swept off her feet by a man in a navy uniform or unfeasibly tight leather trousers. "Cameron, this is crazy." "No, you wearing pyjamas is crazy. Is this a style trend that I missed?" It was impossible not to laugh. "It's a long story. Major drama with Drew this morning, and I left before I could get dressed." Cameron's expression immediately flipped to the dark side. "And how is Drew? Still going for an award for shite husbandry?" "Cameron." There was no mistaking the warning in her voice, but just as she said it, her bottom lip wavered. Why was she defending him? Hadn't he stamped all over her loyalty this morning? He told his first wife that he should never have left her, and that he only married me because I reminded him of her. The tears sprang right back up again, and this time there was no stopping them. "I mean, how could he do that? Was it all just a lie? Was I always just a poor replacement for Sarah?" Cameron shook his head and tenderly pushed her hair back off her face. "God, no, Tess, you could never be a poor replacement for anyone. Drew's an idiot. He always has been." Ignoring the intrigued stares of several other tourists who were milling around, she rubbed tears off her cheeks with the palm of her hand. She felt sorry for the German couple in front of her, who would get home, look at their holiday snaps, and realise that their most romantic photograph had a woman in the background wearing overly casual clothes and sporting a bright red blotchy face. "Tess, forget him. Come back with me tonight. We'll go to Nice. Fly home, you can stay at mine until, forever." It was a great idea. Walk away. Don't look back. Move along. Nothing to see here. Right now, her admittedly cracked heart was overflowing with love for the man in front of her. She adored him. Absolutely adored him. Couldn't ever imagine life without him. But, "Cameron, I can't. I wish I could, and then it would be this great big happy ending." "It could be," he insisted. "It couldn't, Cameron," she said softly. "Drew married me wishing that I was someone else, and look where that got us. I could never do that to you. I love you so much. You're the best friend I could ever have, but it wouldn't be fair to tell you that we could make it as a couple because I don't think we could. I need you in my life, Cameron, every day if possible, but I'm not in love with you, and I'm so sorry. I really wish I was." Gallons of tears accompanied the last crack as her heart broke in two. It was so brutal, so harrowing to say these things to him, but it would be even more cruel to pretend that she felt something that she didn't. His head went down and a few long, tense moments passed before he reacted. He lifted his eyes to meet hers and gave her the saddest smile. "I knew, but I had to try. I think I've always known. If we were going to be together, then it would have worked out before now. You would have woken up one morning, realised you couldn't live without me, dumped the tosser and come running after my body. The fact that he was still being funny made her love him even more. I'm sorry. Don't be. Please don't cut me out of your life, Cameron. I know it's selfish, but I don't ever want you to say goodbye. I never could. There was a long pause as they stared at each other, sad smiles on both their faces. So, what happens now? Tess whispered. I go home, you leave Drew, you come to work, we pretend nothing has happened, I tell you stories about my Brazilian girlfriend, you tell me she's not good enough for me because I'm a 100% love god. She was laughing now, laughing so hard that the tears were back. Indeed you are. I thought you'd split up with her anyway. I did, but she wants me back. Understandable. I think so. Nothing would ever compare to the connection that she had with this man. If she felt a different kind of love for him, then life would be perfect. But she'd rather risk losing him than pretend that they had something that wasn't there, because she knew exactly how much that hurt. Cameron stretched as he got to his feet. I'm going to go now, before I do something very unmanly like cry and clutch onto your ankle, begging you to change your mind. Okay. Tess didn't want him to go, but she understood. She stood up and pulled him in close to her. Cameron, I love you, she whispered. He leaned down and kissed her. I know you do. And then he was gone. Sarah. Sarah spent the morning walking around the Principality, marvelling at the grand houses, enjoying the serenity of the parks and gardens, and thinking about Tess. In the Cathedral of St. Nicholas, she paused at the tombs of Princess Grace and her husband, Prince Rainier, then lit a candle, finding comfort in the silence and peace of the church. Then she thought about Tess again. On she went, wandering up side streets, her gaze never still, always moving from one stunning spectacle to another, torn between treasuring every moment of this and worrying about Tess. Soon she'd seen all the highlights mentioned in the guidebook she'd picked up at the excursion desk before leaving the ship. This, however, she'd saved until last. La Place du Casino, Casino Square. The sight of it filled her with such excitement that for a moment she was sad that she had no one there to share it with. However, giddy wonder soon pushed any sadness to one side. She strolled down past the shops and cafes on one side of the square, cut across in front of the steps up to the legendary casino, then completed the U-shape by staring in the windows of the fabled Hôtel de Paris as she walked past its majestic entrance. For a moment she toyed with the idea of going in, but of course she didn't. It was far too grand, too intimidating. Even in her navy monsoon maxi dress, the most expensive of her Patsy personal shopper purchases, with layers of silver chains around her neck, she would feel out of place. Maybe next time. Perhaps one day she would come back here with the next love of her life, and they'd drink champagne in the bar and revel in the electric atmosphere of it all. Moving slowly through the throngs of people crowding the pavements, Sarah walked up the incline, past Cartier and Celine, then crossed the breathtaking gardens in the middle of the road. That was where she encountered an image that must surely be a figment of her imagination. Tess? Tess, are you okay? Sarah moved quickly over to the younger woman, who was sitting on the steps beside the fountain in her pyjamas, staring at the water, locked in some kind of trance. Sarah's arm stretching around her shoulder snapped her out of it, and she turned to meet her eyes. Tess? Sarah repeated, searching her friend's face for a hint of what she was feeling. I'm so sorry about this morning. I promise you I had no idea. I really didn't. If I'd known, I would have... Sarah, I know that you didn't. I don't blame you for any of this. Sarah relaxed properly for the first time all day, every muscle in her body heavy with relief. That candle in the cathedral had somehow worked. I was so worried about you. The best thing that has come out of this holiday is getting to know you, and I couldn't stand the thought that you might believe I'd done anything to hurt you. Tess flopped her head down onto Sarah's shoulder. I didn't, I promise. I heard him, though, Sarah. I heard what he said. He's an arse, Sarah replied. My friend Cameron just said the same thing. Sarah glanced around. Surely she didn't mean he was here. The phone. Must be the phone. You called him? No, he just left. Oh, bugger, the poor girl was imagining things. Tess pulled her head up, looked at her and smiled sadly. I'm not imagining things, I promise. He just left. Nothing to lose. She pulled the notes out of her bag and handed them over to Sarah, then told her the whole story. So what did you say? Sarah could barely breathe as she waited for the answer. I said no. I couldn't lie to him. Do you want to work things out with Drew? Tess's shoulders slumped as she whispered. No. Sarah squeezed her a little tighter. Tess, Drew doesn't know what he's lost. He's a fool, a total fool. I prefer arse, Tess added, with the closest thing to levity that she'd managed since she watched Cameron walk away. Yes, it does have a ring of authenticity to it, Sarah agreed. So no Drew, and no Cameron. You know my spare room is always free, and there's a very nice single man who calls regularly on behalf of the local senior citizen charity. Generous, but I think I'll pass. Every time Tess spoke or smiled, it reinforced to Sarah just what a mixed-up idiot her ex-husband had turned out to be. What about you? How did things turn out with Tim McGraw? Sarah sighed. I was about to do filthy things to him when I discovered he wore Speedos. It was a passion killer. The two of them were giggling now, so loudly that people were beginning to stare. Tess, can I ask you something? I've never had sex with a man in Speedos. Was that the question? No. Have you ever been in the Hotel de Paris? Sadly not. Do you want to go? Sarah's face was alive with excitement. It was a great idea. The best. Bloody brilliant. When? Now. No! Sarah groaned. Why not? I'm dying to go in, and after the week we both had, we really should damn them all. Let's drink champagne in the Hotel de Paris. Incidentally, if you feel a vibration, that's my MasterCard cacking itself. Sarah, I'm wearing pajamas. I know. I didn't like to say. Let's go buy something for you to wear. All the shops are shut. Sarah just kept batting back every objection. But there's bound to be one in the hotel that's open. Those places never shut. Tess's mouth was opening and closing like a pufferfish, unable to come up with a worthwhile argument. Sarah took that as permission to proceed, pulled her pal to her feet, and they walked briskly down to the hotel, fortunately managing to duck in the door when the security guards were busy giving directions to a large group of golf trouser-wearing Americans. Inside, Sarah threw back her shoulders, adopted an air of confident entitlement, and strutted over to the concierge to ask directions to the shops. They were in luck. The instructions took them across the opulent lobby, under the most spectacular chandelier Sarah had ever seen. Her heart soared. This was such a great idea. Barely 10 minutes later, Tess was wearing a fine silk cream jersey t-shirt, black crepe trousers, and simple black wedges. She was also refusing to let Sarah pay, insisting that she use her own credit card. The shop assistant, a Slavic blonde with cheekbones that could balance spoons, rang up the purchases on what looked like a control centre for NASA. That will be... Don't tell me, Tess begged. Just put it on this card and leave me in denial. Sarah, have I just spent the cost of a car on an outfit? Sarah leaned over and checked the display on the till. Half a car. Maybe a small starter model? You're right, it's best that you don't know. Okay, where to now? I can't believe we're here. This is so irresponsible, yet it feels so absolutely right. Let's go. They followed directions to the American bar, and as they walked in, the first thing they noticed was the grandeur of the room. The second thing they noticed was the piano player, filling the room with smoky, intoxicating jazz. The third?
Sarah, do you see what I see?
Tess gasped. Sarah nodded. Oh, dear God, why? Why? What had she ever done to deserve this? A huge, big, fat, seminal moment in her life, and she could almost hear the Dyson sucking the joy out of it. Well, 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 ladies, isn't this a small world? Come, pull up a chair. Sarah was absolutely crushed. Is she really here, or am I just locked in some freakish nightmare? She hissed.
Nope, she's here,
Tess replied. And by the looks of it, she's been here for a long, long time. Mona. It's Sarah and Tess. Sarah and Tess! Hello? Come sit down. Sit! Two of my least favourite people. Is Piers with you? That would make it truly the most shit party ever. Somewhere inside, pickled by alcohol, Mona had decided that there was no point fighting it any more. Better to just embrace life's crapness and roll with it. She thought about standing up to greet them, but wasn't entirely confident in her balance skills. Perhaps that last glass of Cristal had been a mistake. In fact, perhaps that last bottle of Cristal had been one too many. Sit, sit, she repeated, then was overcome by a fit of the giggles when she realised she sounded like a demented dog trainer barking out instructions. She'd be going for heel and roll over next. Great commands when dealing with bitches. The lovely waiter, Jean-Paul, materialised as if out of thin air. Mona ordered another bottle of champagne and 2 more glasses. The 2 new arrivals didn't seem overly thrilled, but then they were hardly in their natural habitat. That would be, dunno, Travel Inn? Holiday Inn Express? IKEA? She had no idea where that last thought came from or why it was so funny, but it just was. Her attention was suddenly taken by the images on the screen in the corner. A prince, dressed in his white ceremonial uniform, and his beautiful bride, standing in front of the priest, preparing to commit to spending the rest of their lives together. "Don't do it, love!" Mona blurted, louder than she meant to, earning her furious stares from everyone within earshot. She saw a look pass between Tess and Sarah. Those two were as thick as thieves these days. Thick as thieves. Not far off the mark, really. Hadn't Tess stolen Drew from her? And now Sarah was stealing Piers. The bitches had so much in common. "Mona, you okay?" Sarah asked. "Oh, yes. Act all concerned when we all know you can't stand me. Well, go ahead and enjoy it, because you're going to love what happens over the next couple of weeks." "Why? What's going to happen?" Sarah asked. Oh, shit. Had she said that last bit out loud? Oops. Mona ignored the question, deciding it was time for some other home truths. What did she have to lose? She had nothing left. "I don't know what he sees in you," she slurred, looking at Tess. "I mean, you're very nice. Very, very nice. And young and pretty. But what do you have in common? Nothing, sweet bugger all." She finished her point with what she thought was a very elegant sweep of her glass. Her sleeve was now soaking. She expected Tess's bottom bloody lip to start quivering like it usually did. But no, the other woman sat up a little straighter and stared right at her. "Do you want to do this now, Mona? Do you really want to?" There was no mistaking the edge of challenge in Tess's voice. Well, who knew she had it in her? "If you want Drew, you can have him. I don't. Our marriage is over." "What? But he said—" "It doesn't matter what he said. He doesn't want me. In fact, it's actually Sarah he wants." Another look passed between them. "But Sarah doesn't want him, and I don't blame her. So there we go. Feel free to give it your best shot." Mona was utterly gobsmacked and struggled until the words finally came. "Sarah, have you got, paranormal knickers or something?" This time it was Sarah who almost choked on her bubbles. Mona wasn't done.
I mean, Drew wants you, and apparently my husband is leaving me for you too.
Tess had to thump Sarah's back after that one. Emergency intervention over. Tess was looking at Sarah expectantly now, too. Piers? Sarah shook her head wearily. That day in Sorrento, when Piers and I went ashore, he told me he had feelings for me.
Whee!
Mona cheered, knocking back another glug of champers.
Oh my God, he didn't!
Tess gasped. I wondered what had happened when you two seemed weird with each other. What did you say? I told him I wasn't interested.
Whee!
Mona repeated, with another champagne chaser, then focused on Sarah again.
Sarah, you can have him. We're over. I appreciate that you knocked him back out of some moral...
She got stuck on that.
Some moral thingy. But honestly, don't hold back on my account.
Poetic justice, eh?
I took your husband, and now my husband wants you. We're like a frigging soap opera.
Sarah didn't reply, just waited as Jean-Paul intervened to top up their glasses. He diplomatically skipped Mona's, but she just did it herself as soon as he was gone.
I'm sorry I did that to you, Sarah, but I loved him. All's fair in love, eh?
Sarah wasn't buying it.
No, she replied quietly. It's not.
Did I tell you he knocked me back, Tess? Mona was getting confused now. Note to self, do not drink any more.
After everything, he knocked me back.
Yes, you told me, Tess replied wearily. But what do you mean, everything? Bugger it, what did it matter if they knew?
I wasn't even invited on this trip at first. Just you two. The two peas in a badly dressed pod.
That required a short giggle before moving on.
So I practically begged him, told him Piers would love it, that Max had always wanted to cruise the Med, then used Max as leverage to make Piers come. See? It takes skill to manipulate every side, but I thought that once we were here, I'd get him.
Tess sat forward in her chair. Mona, if you wanted him so badly, why did you split up in the first place?
Ah, the big question.
Sarah interjected. You don't know this? She asked Tess. She slept with someone else. A football player, wasn't it? Mona nodded.
Bit of a misjudgment. Thought Drew was losing a bit of interest, and a tug of jealousy might nudge him back on course.
I can still hear the sound of the backfire. She might be pissed, but she still had a way with words, she decided. Maybe she could be a poet after her life was destroyed next weekend. A poet. Mona the poet. Anyway, I know you both hate me. It still hurt just a twinge when neither of them objected. She handled it by sailing into fully fledged martyr mode. You'll totally enjoy next weekend, then. I'm ruined. Done. Going to be a laughingstock. So stick that in your wellies and smoke it. What are you talking about? Tess asked, and Mona could see that she was clearly faking concern. Story coming out in the news about me shagging a young hot stud. All true. Dick the size of a small sausage, though. Don't think that will be in the story, will it? A kiss and tell. On me. I'm fucked. In all ways. Shit, those bloody tears were coming again. Sleep. Maybe she just needed to close her eyes. She felt herself swaying over to one side, then stopping as one of them caught her. She wasn't sure which one. They were both kind of blending into each other now. Want to go home. Just want to go home. She felt one of them on each side of her now. Come on, Mona, she heard. The voice sounded nice. Kind. Let's get you to bed. Chapter 21. Barcelona. Sarah. I thought I'd find you up here.
creature of habit."
Sarah smiled, recognizing that Piers was using his ebullient banter to disguise the fact that he was nervous. He was right, though. She hadn't wanted to miss seeing the voyage end as they sailed into Barcelona.
"I just wanted to say thanks again for getting Mona home last night. She wasn't in the best of shape. Smelled like she'd spent the day lying on a pub floor."
"Our surroundings were a bit more glamorous than that," Sarah replied. "In fact, I think you'll discover that when you get your next credit card bill."
"I already checked it online. Just as well we're divorcing. I'd end up bankrupt if she goes on the drink."
Sarah took another sip of her coffee, not sure what to say. She'd thought a lot about this. In fact, for the third night in a row, she'd had a restless, fitful sleep.
"Mona told me it was over. I'm sorry."
Piers shrugged.
"Me too, but it's for the best. We just weren't right for each other. Never were. She's looking for something that I don't know exists."
"A 25-year-old Drew?" Sarah suggested.
"You could be right,"
he said with a smile. There was an awkward silence as Piers shuffled from one foot to the other. This was so out of character that Sarah almost felt sorry for him.
"So I'll go now," he blustered. "We're disembarking shortly. Thanks again. Take care, Sarah. And I'm sorry about... about..."
"I'll go out with you."
Bugger.
Had she actually said that? She had. And she meant it.
"About... what?"
He whipped around to see her face, trying to gauge whether or not this was some crazy joke. "I'll go out with you. I've thought about it all night, and I've decided that if you still want to see me, then I'll go out with you. Mona approves, although she was pissed at the time. Not that I give a toss what she thinks. But you'll have to be officially separated first, because I'm not." She didn't finish because she was up off her feet being swung around the deck with a joy that Kate Winslet and Leonardo DiCaprio never managed to find on Titanic. When he finally put her down, it was only to hold her even closer, before kissing her. Really kissing her in a manner that was way too exuberant for a ship's deck at 6 a.m. Sarah loved every single second of it. The cowboy in Speedos felt so wrong, and now she realized why. This felt so right. It was time. Time for her, time for Piers, and time to start living with some serious love in her life. Not that this was love, not yet, obviously. Well, maybe. But, she pulled back, there's just one thing, Piers.
"Anything."
His eyes sparkled and his jaw was split from one side to the other in the widest grin. She'd made him smile like that, and it felt great. "I know that you have a lot of sway and a lot of power at home, so there's one thing I need you to do for me." Mona. Mona snapped the lock on her vanity case shut and had one last look around the room. The porters had taken their suitcases away half an hour ago, so all that remained was for her to carry off her hand luggage, then head home. The knot of anxiety in her throat sat heavily on the 2 painkillers she'd knocked back to attempt to quell the worst hangover in history. She didn't even want to think about that. She could clearly remember the things she'd said to the other women, and it wasn't her proudest moment. Not that she cared. She'd never had female friends, and that was unlikely to be something that would change any time soon, especially in any scenario featuring those two. In fact, this time next week, what friends she did have would be distancing themselves from her as quickly as they possibly could. She had one more week, 7 days until the story came out that would ruin her. With a deep, pained sigh, she brushed a few imaginary flecks of dust off her shoulders and adjusted the hemline of her jacket. She was wearing a deep aubergine suit with a short peplum jacket and her customary pencil skirt. Black painted shoes with block heels and a Fendi shoulder bag completed the outfit. With her hair styled like a 40s wren, she looked nothing like a woman facing the worst experience of her life. Bag on shoulder, vanity in hand, room checked, she headed for the door, only to jump back when Piers swung it open. "Good morning," he said in a friendly tone. "How are you feeling?" "Fine," she replied. If he wanted to go the cordial route, it was fine with her. They were both at fault in this. No point in finger-pointing and bearing grudges. "What's your plan?" he asked her. "I'll go back to our house, pack up, and find somewhere else to live. If you would stay in a hotel for a couple of days, I'll let you know when I'm done." "You can keep the house," he said, causing her eyes to narrow with suspicion. "What? But I never contributed to that house. It's yours." "Do you want it?" he asked her, like he was talking about a pint of milk or the last roll at breakfast. "Of course." "Then have it." The delight had barely begun to bubble when reality came calling. What was the point? There was no way she could stay in Glasgow after the story ran. "What is this? A guilt gift for tossing me aside?" "I think you'll find I wasn't the one doing the tossing," he barbed. She had no energy left to fight. Instead, she gathered her things again and took a step towards the door. "Have it. After next week, it won't matter anyway." "Are you talking about the story the Sunday News is planning to run?" She stopped, turned, closed her eyes. "How did you know?" "Sarah told me." Of course she did. She probably loved it. They were probably counting the hours until it came out, and... "It's dead. The story is gone. Won't happen." But... how? Was this some kind of joke? Was he baiting her, lulling her into a false sense of security? First the house, and now this. It didn't make sense. He was up to something. Had to be. "I spoke to Jay Lemming at the News, and we came to an arrangement. He's been trying to get my advertising for years. Now he has it. The ads will be featuring a model called Adrian, who I believe is currently suffering from amnesia caused by the excitement of getting the gig." Mona reached to hold onto the table, as the intense gratitude and relief made her quite literally go weak at the knees. "Thank you, Piers. Thank you," she whispered. "You're welcome," he replied. "I hope you find happiness, Mona. But I didn't do this for you. I did it because Sarah asked me to." Tess. Drew handed Tess her bag and then hugged her tightly. "Are you sure you won't come back with us?" She shook her head. "No, not yet," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "I'm sorry about your birthday dinner last night. I hope you had a good time." "I actually did. John and Penny and the kids were in great form. And Eliza brought Kai. He's a nice boy. I made sure they stuck to orange juice all night." Missing his celebration meal in Monte Carlo wasn't a deliberate act of spite or vengeance. By the time they'd got Mona back to her cabin, put her to bed, then watched her for a while to make sure she didn't fall out or throw up, it was too late to join the party. Instead, Tess had used the time to think. By the time Drew came back to the cabin, she had been ready to talk the situation through with him, without feeling the urge to throw out insults and recriminations. It was time to move on. No point in looking back. They headed down to the gangplank and handed their passes in for the last time before heading to the minibus Drew had hired to transport some of the group to the airport. She'd opted out of going with them, and apparently Mona had already left in a limo. Of course she had. Tess said goodbye to John, Penny, the twins, Eliza and Sarah, hugging them all tightly and promising to call Sarah soon. She meant it. Even when she was no longer a Gold, she knew Sarah would be in her life forever. When everyone else was aboard the bus, Drew came back around to where she stood on the concourse and kissed her softly. "I'm sorry, Tess." She knew that he meant it. "Me too." She waited until they were out of sight before turning to head back to the taxi rank. She was almost there when a black limo pulled up next to her, and Max and Piers jumped out. "Hey, congratulations," she told Piers. "I hear we have something to celebrate." He bowed, his face flushing with happiness. "I'm just going to nip back into the loo. It's my age," he said with a wink. Max leaned back against the car. "I know it wasn't exactly a peaceful trip, but I had a great time with you. I'm glad I came." "I am too," she told him truthfully. "I hope everything works out for you." "So, where are you off to?" She shrugged. "I'm not sure yet. My boss has agreed to give me a leave of absence for a month, so I'll stay in Barcelona for a few days and work out what I want to do." It felt strange even saying that. For the first time in years, she was going to make her own plans. She wasn't sure whether sadness or excitement topped her emotional scale right now. "You know, I was thinking about doing that myself." "Really?" She thought about it for a moment, then made a spontaneous decision. Maybe it was time for her to take a few chances too. "Company would be good. I'd like—" "Holy fuck! Tell me I'm not seeing that." It was Piers. He'd reappeared beside them and was staring at a point over their shoulders. Both Max and Tess spun around, but Tess didn't see the problem. There was a line of taxis, a few people milling around, a very tall blonde female. Hang on, she was walking towards them, her gaze unequivocally fixed on Max. "Someone you know?" Tess asked, confused. "Unfucking fortunately," Piers whistled. "Dad!" Max reprimanded him. "Yes, I know her. That's my wife." Epilogue. 1 year later. "Sarah, you are stunning. Absolutely stunning." Tess gave her friend a huge hug. It wasn't a false compliment. Sarah's cream, one-shouldered Grecian dress fell in glorious waves to the floor. Her hair, much longer now, piled up on her head, with loose tendrils falling around her face. She was the most beautiful bride Tess had ever seen. "Mona helped me pick it," Sarah giggled. "She made me promise not to spill anything on it, tear it, or accidentally tuck it into my knickers when I go to the loo. She still thinks I'm a hopeless fashion case." Tess spotted Mona, in stunning cerise with a hat the size of a tyre, working the room. "How are things going with you two?" "Good, actually. Can you believe it? She hasn't changed, still brittle with a twist of evil, but at least she's now civil. I think the winner was Piers giving her the house and moving in here. Oh, and Dweezil. Since she started shagging him, she's had a much sunnier disposition. Listen, you know Drew's here. Are you okay with that? He's got his new girlfriend with him. I think she's 22. They're going to Ibiza next week." "So much for slowing down." "I'm fine with it, honestly. I'm happy for him, I promise. I just hope he doesn't pull a muscle on the dance floor." "Good," Sarah said, unable to resist giving her another hug. "Anyway, enough about us. Tell me about you. You're looking great." "That's what 11 months touring South America in a camper van does for you. It was a riot. My mum and dad are still over there, but they're heading north. My mother reckons she's not too old to crack Hollywood." They were both still laughing when Piers joined them and cuddled Tess until she couldn't breathe. "How are you doing, my love?" "I'm great, you handsome big devil." He beamed. "Can you believe we got married in our garden? I've wed the cheapest bride ever." "And you love it," Sarah reminded him. Not that she had to. "Yes, I do. I really do." He kissed her tenderly, making Tess's heart melt, then took her by the hand. "Can I borrow my wife, Tess? We've got a cake to cut." "Go ahead." They were only gone a second when another familiar face walked towards her. "Hey, stranger." "Max! It's so good to see you." He was beyond smart in his black suit, with his bow tie hanging undone around his neck. "So, I hear you went travelling." She gave him the pamphlet edition of her travels through Colombia, Argentina, Bolivia, Peru, and Brazil. It had been a wild, dangerous adventure, more because of her dad's driving than anything else. "I just need to find a new job now," she added. "They couldn't keep it open for me for longer than a month, so I quit." It wasn't worrying her. She was down to the last of her savings, but she had a few interviews lined up. And if all else failed, well, There was always Hollywood with her mother. As a waiter passed, Max grabbed 2 glasses of fizzy stuff and handed one to her. What about Cameron? Tess chuckled. We actually met up with him and his girlfriend in Brazil. They're living there now, and she's infatuated with him. He loves it. You should see her, Max. She looks like Giselle's more attractive sister. The last time I saw them, they were dirty dancing on a rainforest float at the carnival. I think me turning him down was the best thing that ever happened to him. I doubt that, he said with a twinkle in his eye. I definitely doubt it. Oh, really? She toyed with him. It felt so good to be talking to him again. How many times had she thought about him over the last few months? Ah, if only... She looked around, searching for the obvious missing person. Where's your wife? She couldn't make it? She'd forgotten how his eyes glistened when he smiled. I'm not married anymore. Last time I saw her was that day at the port in Barcelona. As soon as I spoke to her, I realised it wasn't what I wanted, so I told her it wouldn't work. As far as I know, she's back living with my ex-partner again. Ex? Yeah, I sold the business, moved up here to work with Dad. Interesting, she replied with mock seriousness. So I was wondering if maybe some night you're not busy, or in, say, Peru, if we could maybe go out for dinner? She didn't even get the yes out before he leant over, gently put his hand on the side of her face, and kissed her, a deep, sensual kiss that she didn't ever want to stop. Hey, you two, that's enough. I'm the only one that's allowed to snog a hot chick here today. The entire crowd laughed at Piers's reprimand, and he held their attention. Ladies and gentlemen, my wife and I, thunderous applause, would like to cut our wedding cake. Sarah's friend Patsy wheeled out an enormous bosom, its modesty protected only by a huge white frilly marzipan bra. The crowd went wild. That's so embarrassing! Tess heard the voice behind her and turned to give Eliza's hand a squeeze. She was with her new boyfriend, Josh, having decided that he was a much better option than having a long-distance relationship with a boy who lived hundreds of miles away. The bride and groom kissed again, then made a speech thanking everyone for coming and announcing that they would shortly be leaving to go on honeymoon. Where are you going? Shouted a voice from the crowd. Piers turned to his bride and kissed her again. I've no idea, Sarah replied. Just as long as it's not a cruise. You've been listening to The Other Wives Club by Shari Lowe, narrated by Helen Vine, published by Rosa Audiobooks, an imprint of W.F. Howes Limited. This work is copyrighted 2015 Shari Lowe. This recording is copyrighted 2019 Head of Zeus.